What is good, everybody? We are live. Welcome to the 33rd episode of the Worldwide Company of Gamers podcast. I hope you're all doing well. It's been a hell of a week, fam. I don't know if you've been up to date with all the news going round and circulating in the madhouse that is Twitter and in the gaming news in general. Quick shout out to everybody in the chat. You're all lit tonight. We've got Toolman. What's good, brother? Great to see you here as always, bringing the tools. We've got Shaky Shako, my dude. We've got Dank Nate. Thank you for all your support as well, bud. We've got Buck Roger, the OG. Oh, shit, my stream's crashing here. Sorry. I'm still struggling with the internet, guys. I'm sorry. There's nothing I can do. I don't know why it drops. It's random. It just decides to. We've got Buck Roger, the OG. In the chat, we've got DE. Great to see you, Wolfaki, my dude. So many great people here. Gadget, shout out to all of you. Jonathan Martinez, as always. Let me know how the audio is, and if it starts lagging out for you and bits are missed. If suddenly the audio cuts off or whatever, will you please let me know? If it's not an issue, if you see a bit of stutter, but the audio is fine, just don't worry. You don't need to mention it. I already am aware. I can see the stuttering. My concern is about the audio and if things get left out or cut off. So if that happens, give me a shout. Let me know in the chat. I'd be grateful. But yeah, we've got an epic show tonight for you all, guys. It's going to be a juicy one. And here's the professional thumbnail for you all. Here's the not so professional thumbnail for you all. We've got the I don't know, the what's the that newspaper that has all the financial business in it, the Telegraph.
The Financial Times.
We've got the Financial Times, and then we've got the Sun. I love it. But yeah, I hope you're all doing well, guys, and let's get the show on the road. We've got a smaller, more intimate panel today, my dudes. So far, we've just got Wilhelm and David, but what a combo. I mean, you can't get better than that. It's like a ham sandwich. It's simple, but it's effective. So let's start from the top. Mr. Folky himself, how are you doing, buddy?
All right, doing well. Beautiful day down here today. Watching a nice sunrise and having a chat with friends. It's a good start to a Sunday for me.
Fantastic. That's great. People are telling me to disable the chat on the stream. I'm not sure whether I should because of God of War leaks, apparently. There are leaks that are really happening and there might be trolls coming into the chat. Do you guys want me to disable the chat? I can hide the chat on the main screen here so people can't see it if you want, and keep it hidden so that you guys can just enjoy the show and not worry. And if you choose to look at the chat below, by all means, at your own risk. But I'll keep the chat off the main screen in case leaks do come up.
Shaki wrote Will plus David plus Wooly equals Sheen. I couldn't agree more.
It's his birthday today, isn't it, Wilhelm?
Yeah, that's that as well. Everybody right in the chat. Happy birthday, Charlie Sheen. It's the legend himself's birthday.
Loving it.
He's the man, the myth, the legend, the uncut living legend himself.
He gave birth to what was it? Consciousness.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. So how have you? So what have you been playing, David?
So I've been working through Yakuza 6 with myself.
Nice.
The wife and I have been playing Lego Harry Potter together, and the son and I have been working through. We're just wrapping up Jurassic World Evolution and about to help him get through Pokemon Arceus in preparation for the new Pokemon games coming out in November. So,
very nice.
Yeah. Doing a bit.
Nice. And what about you, Wilhelm? How have you been?
I've been doing great. Just came back yesterday from my trip from Bosnia. Had a dang old time. It was just beautiful. It was just fabulous. You know, it was just great being there. Also considering it's like sort of like my home. You know, it's like
Hmm.
where my roots are. It's where my family is, and it was beautiful being there. You know, just every day was like just about enjoying life, just living to the absolute fullest. And
Hmm.
now I'm back here. Also been having a very slow time, and also of course one of my highlights was hosting not last episode, but the episode where we interviewed the guys from the Restoration Project, which was an amazing episode. Thank you again, Wooly, for the opportunity. It was just an amazing opportunity. And David told you that on the spot you'd come up with gold. Like you came up with like, I don't know, 7 or 8 questions.
Yeah, man.
It was
Thank
just
you.
just
I
amazing.
appreciate it.
I can imagine you're still on cloud nine from that. To be honest, I am too. It was such an amazing, excellent episode, and it was just a huge honor to get a first hand exclusive debut of footage and gameplay and a first look at how the project's coming along.
I know,
To
I
get
know.
and
That
to
had
get
me
three
really fucking
three
stoked.
devs to have that conversation, that three-way conversation from between the three of them, along with the rest of the panel. It was just a really awesome opportunity, and bro, I couldn't not have you host. You had to be the host for that. It's Duke Nukem, for crying out loud. Come on, it needed to be you. There was no other way. There was no other way. No other option. So,
Oh, always bet on Duke.
always bet on Duke and Wilhelm and Charlie Sheen. But yeah, no facts. I'm glad you're here, buddy. I'm glad you enjoyed it, and I'm glad that you had a great holiday as well. Let's get the show on the road. I know Folky's a little limited on time today, so we're gonna keep it more kind of to the point and more concise. But what a topic we have. We've got a few to talk about. First of all, we've got the C.M.A. That's a huge deal. For those who don't know who the C.M.A. are, they're the Competition and Markets Authority. They have a. I mean, Folky, what you have you have more of an idea on what it is they do. I'm sure. What could you sum that up for us listeners?
Yeah, in a very, very succinct nutshell, the C.M.A. in the UK is like most other regulatory bodies that operate where free market economies, or say free market in inverted commas, economies are around the world. They basically are there to oversee, make sure that the markets don't get abused or taken advantage of, or that's what they're supposed to do. And they're there to protect. They're supposed to be there to make sure that any new entrants can gain access to it, and any current people in it don't stuff it up. That's basically what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, that's a good summary. And just so people can see. I don't know what's going on here. Why it's not showing the. Oh, that's why I'm not on the main screen. I'm still a noob at this whole thing. So my dudes, we've got basically an investigation from the Competition and Markets Authority to do with Activision Blizzard's acquisition. They kind of summarize it in a small thread on Twitter, in a few tweets as to why they've basically called for Microsoft's position to be held for further investigation. And the reason is this. They put, we've been investigating Microsoft's anticipated $69 billion billion purchase of Activision Blizzard, and have discovered that the deal could substantially lessen competition in gaming consoles, multi-platform game or multi-game subscription services, and cloud gaming services. They go on to say Microsoft is one of the biggest players in the gaming industry. Together with Sony, Nintendo UK, they've led the games console market for the past 20 years with limited competition from new rivals. Activision Blizzard develops and publishes some of the world's best-selling and most recognizable gaming franchises, including Call of Duty and World of Warcraft. We're concerned that if the deal goes ahead, and this is the key, it could harm rivals, including recent and future entrants into the gaming industry, by reusing or hindering access to Activision Blizzard games. Microsoft and Activision Blizzard have now 5 days to make proposals to address our concerns. If the proposals are not sufficient, we'll explore this in more depth and reach a decision that works for UK gamers and businesses. So, there's been a huge amount of backlash from this. Safe to say. They've been... a lot of people are acclaiming and accusing Sony of bribing the C.M.A. I see you laughing, Folky. You want to... Let's address this big ugly ass kind of elephant that has suddenly been created from pure conjecture, shall we?
Yeah, I can't stop laughing about this. Is they're claiming that,
bro, it's hilarious.
It's nuts, and it's funny. The certain people, certain individuals all across different social media platforms start screaming that it's not fair, it's not right, it's not just. You know, all the rest of it. They shouldn't do this. They've got no rights to do this. This is just, people complaining, and Sony's getting their way, and Sony's paying for this, and all the rest of it. Do they not? It's almost as if they think that the laws in America apply across the whole world, but they miss the point. A lot of the times, the ones that are saying that it's not fair, it's unjust, and Sony's paid them off, the rest of it, they miss the point as in that what you just read. The key thing is they're not looking at the deal as to whether it is or isn't good for current people in the market. They're specifically looking at this deal to see if it's going to restrict new entrants into the market.
Mm-hmm.
And and everyone goes, oh, well, what does that mean? It's like, well, can you imagine if if Apple decided that they wanted to get off mobile only, or mobile gaming only, and they wanted to put something on their consoles, right? Onto consoles. And one of the biggest provider of games outside of Nintendo, PlayStation, and Xbox is Activision. Now, imagine if Apple says, right, well, we need console games, we want to make an offering, we want to do something similar to what NVIDIA thing that they do on the NVIDIA cloud gaming, streaming, whatever that thing's called. Let's say we want to do something similar to that. And Apple go, right, we're going to do that. And we want to go and engage with all these third parties to make sure we've got plenty of content in our streaming service. And all of a sudden they go to Activision, and Activision goes, no, sorry, not happening. We're tied to Xbox and Xbox alone. And it takes all of those games away from being available. Mm-hmm. That's what they're looking at, because what would Apple be doing? I don't know, Apple's got plenty of money, but what would Apple be doing in that instance? That they go, right, well, we can't have anything that PlayStation's got, can't have anything Nintendo's got, we can't have anything that Xbox has got, and what third parties are we left with? Ubisoft, EA, and a few of the smaller ones that are coming out of 505 and Devolver. And that's assuming that they can actually do that. So what would Apple be forced to do? Apple would be forced to start buying up studios and publishers. So that's the risk to the marketplace. When you have big players trying to come into a market, they start buying up everything because they can't get free access to the supply. Yeah, the flip side to that, which is just as bad, is what they're also trying to keep an eye out for is new entrants into the gaming segment. So if you've got a huge amount of studios that are existing currently in the UK, because this is specifically for the UK. Mm-hmm. You've got a huge amount of studios exist in the UK. And let's say a couple of smaller independent ones decide they want to get together and they're going to launch their own streaming service. They got their own games and a few other bits and pieces. Or let's say Embracer Group want to get into the streaming stuff, because this is what it's targeted. Because they've claimed, Xbox is the market leader in cloud gaming, which is a fact. Even though cloud gaming is minimal at the moment, Xbox is still the leader there. And streaming service and all the rest of it, Xbox is one of the leaders of subscription services for gaming. If Embracer Group decided they wanted to get into it, but they didn't have access to all, they've got their own games, but they didn't have access to the other stuff, straight away they're in an anti-competitive or a non-competitive position. It's DOA.
Yeah.
So, and it's the same thing with Amazon, same thing with Netflix, all these other ones that are starting to get into that space. At the moment, they could go and strike a deal with Activision and they could have all the Activision stuff on their streaming service.
Mm-hmm.
But if it became unavailable to them, that's restricting the marketplace for new entrants.
Exactly.
That's what the C.M.A. is wanting to look into further, and they're seeking assurances from Xbox. Not lip service, like they can give to the FTC and some of the other ones that have already rubber stamped it. They're not looking for lip service. They're looking for genuine, hard, factual evidence that in Xbox's plans, in Microsoft's plans, that they're not going to lock this thing away from everybody else. And it comes down to the size. Everyone goes, but PlayStation's bought all these, and these bought all these, and Tencent bought all these, and all these deals. It's not even close to being on the same planet for comparison. PlayStation's bought a heap of studios in the last 12 months that are either funded by PlayStation to start with, or working exclusively for PlayStation, or they've built them up from something. The only exception to that is Bungie. Mm-hmm. And Bungie's not pulling Destiny off anything. One of I think 2 of their 3 future games are being funded by PlayStation now anyway, so that they're not taking anything away from the marketplace in that respect. And one of those 3 future games is going to be available on multi-platform.
Yeah, I just want to iterate. I just want to bounce off that point, Folky, that, I think there's a perfectly valid reason for concern, because everything Phil Spencer has said prior to the acquisition of Bethesda, he's 180'd on. Let's put this into perspective, right? Let's just weigh up the situation from not from a fanboy perspective, but from a literal kind of, this is the shit that's been said. So shout out to Zubitech. He's been on the show a couple of times. Absolutely love and rate this guy highly. He's a legend. He posted this, just re-quoting Phil Spencer's words himself. In fact, I'll blow this up on... hold on, let me get full screen going for you guys. There we go. Look at that bad boy. Our sexy new full screen mode. I hope you like it. So, this is Zubitech. Before the Bethesda acquisition, notice what Phil Spencer said. This deal was not done to take games away from another player base like that. Nowhere in the documentation that we put together was how do we keep other players from playing these games. We want more people to be able to play these games, not fewer people to be able to go play games. After the Bethesda acquisition, Phil Spencer then said, if you're an Xbox customer, the thing I want you to know is that this was about delivering great exclusive games for you that ship on platforms where Game Pass exists. Could there be any greater a contradiction? And there's a narrative that's been going around, as per usual. People will argue, but Wally, those games are still on PlayStation right now. You can play them. Let's not be disingenuous, yeah. Let's cut the bullshit, right? This isn't talking about games that have already released. This is talking about IPs established IPs and their future sequels, their future iterations, right? And those future iterations are Xbox exclusive. You ain't gonna see Fallout, a new Fallout, a new Elder Scrolls, a new Doom, a new flipping Dishonored, or any of that shit on PlayStation. Established IPs. And it baffles me that this just doesn't seem like people are conflating IP and games that are currently out. And obviously they're not going to remove Fallout 4 or Skyrim Legendary Edition or whatever from PlayStation. That's not what we're saying. But are we going to get Elder Scrolls 6 on PlayStation? It's still Elder Scrolls. It's still an established IP that tens of millions of people on PlayStation have enjoyed and aren't going to get anymore. And that's the issue here. Phil Spencer directly went against his words because he literally said before the Bethesda acquisition, this wasn't done to take games away. And then after the Bethesda acquisition, he says this was done to give you exclusive games. And you know
that point's been referenced in the documentation at C.M.A. as well. That because of past actions, that's pretty much the way they worded it was very diplomatic. But if you understand the way these places, these regulators say stuff, they basically said he said in the past that he was not going to do it, and he did it. So this time we're going to have a good look at it.
I love that.
And a lot of people don't. They just go, oh yeah, like you said, oh Sony's just paying them off, and Sony's having a big whinge and all the rest of it. It's quite funny that 2 weeks ago, one of the narratives getting around on social media was, oh, the ponies are just crying and they're begging and they'll never get a chance to change this, and it's happening, there's nothing you can do about it. And in the last 2 days since the C.M.A's come out, a heap of people on the other side of the fence
writing letters, bro. They're writing freaking letters.
Boys absolutely off their heads, going, how dare they can't do it, the thing's corrupt, they should all... One person called for the entire board of the C.M.A. to be investigated for corruption.
You literally had... you had to, journalists, literally, Tom Warren saying that. Just complete conjecture that the C.M.A. have been paid by Sony as a last line of defense. And I'm sorry, it's proven to me that journalists today are so far off the mark of what is common sense that there's just no integrity there, but there's also no credibility there anymore. I mean, here's another case in point. The Verge revealed that Jim Ryan received a letter off Phil Spencer saying that Call of Duty would still be available on PlayStation several more years beyond the current Sony contract in place. Oh, how generous, several more years. I thought it's not going to be made exclusive at all. I thought it was to be kept multiplat.
Yeah. Well, that 2 weeks ago, it was, it's going day and date. It's going to be exclusive day and date. He said he was going to put it on there, but, and this was coming from the fanboys on the green side. Phil said it was going to go on there, but he'll change his mind. It'll go day and date, and you guys are going to miss out. Oh, you're crying because you're going to miss out on the COD. And okay, 2 weeks ago, all the PlayStation players were going to miss out on Call of Duty when the contract ends. And then it was, oh no, he's going to pull it early. You guys are you're not going to get any of it. All right, cool, no dramas. C.M.A. sticks its head up, and then all of a sudden this thing, he wrote a letter and he said it was going to be on PlayStation. Like, for Christ's sake, if you're going to flip narratives or switch narratives all the time just for clickbait and to chase bloody views, pick something that's a little bit more substantial that's not going to harm your fucking credibility, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
And that's not influencers, that's the journalists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
So,
what's worrying. These aren't just people with opinions. These are people with positions, responsibilities.
yeah, yeah.
And shout out to Aziza, Ghost in the Garage Gaming. What's good, brother? Really enjoyed being on TSGP with you the other night. Ice Queen Gaming. What's good, Dawn? Great to see you, Mary Wilcox as well. Hey everyone. Thanks for jumping in. This all actually ties in together. I've noticed that they're all quite coherent and in sync with each other. Whilst we're still talking about C.M.A, we could actually talk about this other topic as well, how Phil honoured the contract. What am I talking about here? Well, in rebuttal to the C.M.A calling for, this deal to be investigated further because of previous things Phil Spencer has said, and then how he's done the opposite once the acquisition has been complete, i.e. Bethesda, from promising them to remain, like never intending for them to be taken away and be made exclusive, to them suddenly becoming exclusive as soon as the deal is done, right? People are rebutting and claiming that Phil has honoured previous contracts, so he's shown he's trustworthy. I cannot stress enough, guys. This really shows a lack of understanding, but it's more that's fine. The issue is not trying to understand, not taking the time to understand. What does honouring the contract mean? When Phil Spencer said that he will honour the contract of Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo, does that mean that Phil was being bless his heart, a righteous man and being merciful and letting the deal proceed, letting the contract go ahead? That is so far off the mark of what that actually means. They had no choice but to let the contract go ahead or offer a counter offer that would compensate Sony pretty heavily, no doubt. Folky, do you want to kind of embellish this with more? Because I wrote this in a tweet the other day to somebody who was insisting that that the honouring the contract literally didn't mean. Somebody was insisting that Phil was being a nice guy in honouring the contract. They evidently didn't know what honouring the contract actually meant.
A lot of people don't. If someone says they're going to honour a contract, it basically means that it doesn't mean that they're going to do everything that's in it. It just means that they're not going to change it. So if you've got a contract that's got option points and trigger points and all the rest of it, say for example, you and I, Wooly, enter into a contract, I'm going to build you a house. And part of that contract says that I'll have the house built by this date, otherwise there's termination, there's penalties for being late. If I pull out of it or you pull out of it, there's a termination structure so that, for whatever valid reason, if the house can't get built to the standard that we both agree on, we're both protected, right? I'm not going to be out of pocket and you're not going to be out of place. Part of that contract might also include optional extras that are subject to availability or subject to suitability or whatnot, because you may or may not have the block of land already, and we may or may not have to do a heap of digging, or it might, council regulations and all the rest of it. But if somebody comes and buys me out and they take over responsibility for that contract and they say they're going to honour it, it basically means that they're going to honour building your house. They may or may not honour the optional extras. They can say, no, we're not going to do those, or we are going to do those, or any amendments or anything like that. That's just a very basic example of what honouring the contract means when one of the contract parties changes. Because it means that instead of dissolving the original agreements and striking new ones, they just carry over and you continue. As for this particular instance with this communications and whatnot about honouring the contracts that he's made comments around with Bethesda and upcoming Activision stuff, what honouring the contracts for that situation may be, and I can't speak in absolute authority because I haven't seen the contracts, and probably very few people have. Mm-hmm. But understanding how the basics of these things work for the ones that I do get to see, there will be games. There'll be a contract for a game to be supplied, and there'll be remuneration given the other way. There may be funds involved in paying for the game to be developed or marketed or whatnot, based on whatever projected revenues will come from the sales of said titles. So depending on what it is, it might be a lot of money, it might be not much money. But for Phil to cancel the contract, for example, the ones that did Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo with Bethesda, if he was to cancel those agreements that close to deliver, like they were in within
the last
12,
year,
18 months.
Yeah.
Within the 12 months before delivery. So there's two clauses in contracts that will always smash the person who terminates it. One of them is a clawback clause, which relates to expenditure incurred and cancellation, expenditure incurred and fees associated with developing or building or making, manufacturing, whatever. And then there's the termination clause, which outlines who's paying for what should the contract be terminated for whatever reasons. Now, if in the termination clause, there's usually a sub-clause that says, or that outlines what's a valid termination reason. And if something falls outside of that valid termination reason, then certain multipliers will apply. So, for example, if he said, we bought Bethesda, these two games are not going to PlayStation. Mm-hmm. Aside from Bethesda having spent all that money, PlayStation would go, right, well, we're going to hit the clawback on it. So any of the funds for marketing or anything we've put in to develop the game, and not just cash paid, but like time spent by studio
away
managers
from
and
other
executives
projects,
yeah,
it's a knock-on
effect. The work,
potential initial sales would probably fall into the mix, because they will have shaped their future roadmap according to the estimated profits made off the game.
That stuff, that the future revenue it will be in the termination clause rather than the clawback clause. So clawback looks to invest in money spent, usually money committed and spent, or committed to be spent. So there's a clawback point there, but it's not restricted to, if we put in $30 million to build that game, we just get $30 million back. It's all the money invested plus all the time, labour, materials, like the works. It nearly doubles. Clawback clauses usually end up doubling whatever you've put in by the time you finish with them. And the termination clauses. Termination clauses is where they go, well, there's a set fee for termination, or there may be a set fee percentage for termination. Then there's loss of future revenue, and that can have multipliers on it, where it goes, if the contract is terminated for exclusivity reasons or whatever it is, because of a change of ownership structure or something like that, then we seek to recompense 2.5 times whatever the first 5 years worth of revenue for the particular game was, based on this estimate. If Phil went and cancelled Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo, that could have quite easily cost him hundreds of millions of dollars, like $400 or $500 million.
And it just wasn't worth it. Why pay that amount of money for a game that's soon to release? It's so much better just letting the studio spend another 12 to 18 months polishing and finishing off the game. They'll rack in a shit ton of money from sales if those games sell well, and accolades from their commercial success, from their critical success, not just commercial. That's money in Microsoft's bank, because once they own Bethesda, the money Bethesda makes from their game that they released on PlayStation, it's going back into the pot for ultimately for Microsoft. So there is no. Of course, Phil Spencer would honour the contract, which is such a funny way of putting it. There would have been too much to lose had he resisted. Had he resisted the contract and come up with a counter offer to basically release the contract, it would have just been financial. It would have just been so financially reckless and careless.
Well, you think about how many games, 500 million. Let's use that as a number, just for example's sake. If he went and spent $500 million to cancel a contract to put a game into Game Pass, how would you feel if you were the other studios?
Repeat that question one more time. Sorry, Folky.
If he spent $500 million to cancel that contract for Deathloop and Ghostwire, just to be able to put those games day one into Game Pass, how would you feel if you were one of the other studios in the Microsoft stable, having not gotten access to additional funding to work on your game?
Mm-hmm.
But the extension of that, I use that as the example.
PR suicide, mate. PR suicide.
Well, think about what the impact, if there's a contract similar to that related around Call of Duty. Now, it's commonly known, well, it's a widely known fact that PlayStation has the marketing rights for Call of Duty, but it's also a broadly understood arrangement that PlayStation assists in the development or has financial investment in the development of those games, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about how much revenue Call of Duty generates for PlayStation, I think Zuby said, and a couple of other people have commented as well, that Call of Duty generally does between $1 to $3 billion a year.
Let's put that into perspective, Folky. Call of Duty makes literally what it costs Sony to buy the entirety of Bungie with a bonus on top.
That's what Call of Duty makes for Activision, but you need to make adjustments to look at just the Sony side. But you're right.
Yeah.
Activision makes out of it what it costs Sony to buy it. But let's say use the $2 billion as the average. So if it's 1 to 3, let's say they do $2 billion every year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of that $2 billion, sorry, just give me a second here.
Whilst you're looking that up, brother, let's just say a quick hello to Retro.
Are you there?
He jumped in on the panel. Yeah, can you hear me?
Sorry, you guys just blotted out on me.
Can you hear me, Folky?
I can hear you now.
Oh,
yep,
sweet,
sorry.
Sweet. Just whilst you're doing that, brother, whilst you're getting it up, getting up what you're looking for. Let's just say a quick hi to Retro. He's jumped in. What's good, brother? You okay?
Yeah, I'm good, bro. Sorry I'm late. I slept in a little bit. I went down for a little lie and just didn't wake up.
All good, mucker. All good. No problem at all. You keeping well? What you been playing?
Nothing, because I've been sleeping. It's my first night off now since work. For work. So I plan on getting on Destiny 2 a little bit later.
It's so good, bro. Such a good game.
Oh, I'm definitely getting into it, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah, enjoy, man. Well, glad that you're here, bro. Sorry, Folky, carry on, mate.
I was going to say, if we use Call of Duty as the example, Call of Duty. So if you use $2 billion as the average for how much revenue Call of Duty makes total,
mm-hmm.
And you got to bear in mind that just short of 75% of the revenue made out of Call of Duty is microtransactions and DLC and battle passes. Only about 27.5% of the revenue that Call of Duty makes for Activision comes from the game sale. It's quite an odd split that way. So to plug the game sales hole for PlayStation, they only got to find a couple $100 million a year. I've spoken about this before. Net impact is $250 million in a year for game sales side, which is less than 2% their total revenue. Which the foreign exchange movements recently have done more than that. It's the microtransaction side where the impact will be felt the most. And about 40%, I think it was 40%, 70% of COD sales are on PlayStation.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's about the standard, and it's
70-30 between PlayStation and
Xbox,
it's about
70-30 between PlayStation and Xbox. The problem there is you've also got to take into account the PC. PC players. So when you factor in the PC players, instead of it being 70-30, it's more around 55% is on PlayStation. 30-something% is on PC, and the rest is on Xbox. So it's yeah. Hang on, I'm just doing that. So if you work that back, there's potentially $1 billion annually in revenue. Not $1 billion. Sorry, I need to adjust that for one other thing.
All good.
Say $400 million a year is the revenue impact to PlayStation, right?
Mm-hmm.
On this example. But if the multiplier is 2.5 times per game cancelled, and Phil cancels 2 games plus Warzone, well, there's 3 games done.
That's like over $1 billion.
Yeah.
$1 billion
That's
lost.
just over $1 billion. Now, where's the sensibility in that? He's going to forego over $1 billion in revenue and then pay another $1 billion to take games away from PlayStation and impact the revenue stream down the future. And this is assuming that the revenue stream structure doesn't change on Call of Duty alone, let alone all the rest of the Activision games that are potentially contracted to go out to PlayStation. So there's a negative point there, right? He's just foregone revenue and spent money. So there's a potentially $2 billion impact to Microsoft just to be able to do it day and date in Game Pass. Mm-hmm. If they do it day and date in Game Pass and don't have it on PlayStation, then where are they going to backfill that revenue stream from? Because Game Pass isn't exactly making big bank for Xbox at the moment. And if they're going to rely on the microtransactions, they might as well make the damn thing free to play. Mm-hmm. But if they're going to rely on the microtransactions to backfill that revenue gap that they've just generated by taking it off PlayStation, it really is relying that Xbox gamers and the PC gamers are really going to buy big on those microtransactions. It's been proven. It's a proven point over the last couple of years, because it happened with the DLC for Halo Infinite. It happened with the DLC for Forza Horizon 5. It's happened with a lot of the other DLC that's on Game Pass games.
It relies on in-game monetization for that model. And that, again, ties into the other topic, which is literally not only did Thomas Puher agree, and Thomas Puher, for those who don't know, he works at Remedy. I think he's a director at Remedy. He agrees that the financial model that Game Pass imposes on devs is a difficult compromise. And it's difficult for independent studios to kind of get with. Well, you know, he was agreeing with Callisto Protocol developer Striking Distance Studios, the lead designer Glenn, the lead of that. He said the same thing recently in an article. I'll get the article up shortly in a bit, but that just ties back into the fact that he said, if you look at the article in depth, he actually said that for his kind of game, it's difficult financially to justify foregoing sales because of the lack of in-game monetization. The lack of in-game monetization makes sorry, I'm just, my connection's botting here for a sec. Makes the lack of in-game monetization makes the feasibility of the Game Pass Day One model very, very difficult for them as a developer to get behind, which implies that evidently you would need in-game monetization for that game to financially do very, very well, unless it was already from the get-go a very low-budget title.
And that therein lies the key points. It's for it to do well on monetization, it's got to be low budget to begin with, and you've got to have a large base prepared to pay the cash. But those examples I just gave before of games that are in Game Pass Day One that have microtransactions and DLC and all the rest of it heavily associated with them, have a look at what impact that has actually made. I'll use Halo Infinite as an example because I don't care. Everyone can shit on it this week because they deserve it. They fucking deserve it. I'm not an Xbox gamer by any means, but the disrespect that's been shown to Halo from Microsoft than Xbox at the moment.
Yeah,
To their
facts.
marquee title. I could wring people's necks if I was in any position of power over there. I would have fired a lot of them by now. Because how dare they do that? And anyway, that's a rant that I'll go on that I don't really need to.
We'll be talking about Halo shortly, Folky. Don't you worry.
But the Halo Infinite, it gets split. The multiplayer is free to play, and it's got microtransactions. The thing's not making any money because the quality is garbage of what you're buying. You're not really buying anything worth spending money on. People spending money on it. It's worse than some mobile games, I'll be honest, in my opinion. But anyway, so the free piece has heaps of microtransactions. Doesn't make any money. Okay, well, what about what went in the Game Pass? Halo Infinite was in Game Pass. Again, Game Pass is $1 if you're a sucker and you want to pay $1, or you can get it for free if you put in the effort. And you've got all, what'd they say, 20 million players or some crap like that, and it made nothing. It had barely impacted on the revenue stream. It was underwhelming, to put it lightly, if you follow the financial impacts and all the rest of it. They did all of this stuff in the last 12 months. They had Bethesda on board fully for the last 12 months. They had all this, Forza Horizon 5, Halo Infinite. They had some other third-party key games that went into Game Pass that had microtransactions, all of that, and they grew their revenue by barely $500 million.
Unbelievable.
You think about that, all the money that they put in, and they barely grew their revenue by $500 million.
It's shocking.
And that's after, compared to the previous 12
revenue.
months where they only had
that ain't even profit
for one quarter. No, and that's right. And they've got all those costs that came with Bethesda. They got all those other costs that have come with other development bits and pieces they're working on. And if you look, so I say, you look forward to what's going to happen when Activision comes on board. Straight away, they have to cancel out any Xbox revenue that Activision was doing, because that's no longer going to be there. But the costs are staying. They're going to lose all that PlayStation revenue. They're going to lose all that deal. As I keep saying, Activision makes $8.8 billion or $8.5 billion in revenue, and they've got about $7.5 to $8 billion in expenses. Mm-hmm. They put stuff from Activision day one in the Game Pass and pull it off PlayStation. They are going to crater that revenue stream down to barely $4 billion if they're lucky. It might even be less, but those costs are not going to move. They could potentially add another $4 to $5 billion in losses to Xbox on top of what losses they're already making.
Making $4 billion a year revenue, but burning $7 to $8 billion a year in costs and expenses.
Just to make it. Now, again, and I know a lot of people are, Activision deal's going to save, and they're going to do this, they're playing catch up, but they're getting in front of it. And people say, oh, who should care? Why do we care about the financials? We shouldn't care about the business model and all the rest of it. Like, you should care, because if Xbox makes a $10 billion loss next year after the Activision deal closes, having spent $70 billion to get it there, and all this other heartache they're putting Microsoft through, if the guy that runs Azure and the guy that runs Microsoft 365, if they both decide to say to Satya, get rid of it, it's costing us more money, and we've got these better things to invest the money in that'll get us a higher return, and the shareholders find out about that, guess what will happen to Xbox? So I can tell you now, if they run anywhere between $7 to $10 billion losses in 1 year, that's unacceptable. If he does it 2 years in a row, he's done.
They'd probably sell
the shareholders.
Imagine selling Xbox to like Tencent or something. I don't know if that would be possible.
That's the problem. They're backing themselves into this corner with all of this carry on just because Xbox is trying to buy Activision, which is effectively half the size. And if you're talking revenue streams, if Xbox has got Activision, who's going to approve for them to sell it to anyone? Who the hell in America is going to approve the Chinese state government-owned backed company to buy Xbox? Tencent and NetEase won't be allowed to do it. Who else is left then?
Yeah.
Right, and people say, don't worry about the business. Like, for crying out loud, they're trying to force you in to a streaming service where you don't own anything. And you know that's true.
You know that's true because devs are literally, as we've just seen before, devs are rejecting Game Pass day one. By all means, double dip on it. Devs are completely for that. I mean, they even peddled the Hitman 3 developers, IO Interactive, for praising what they said. They claimed that it was thanks to Game Pass that they had exceeded expectations financially for their fiscal year. And it was such a misquote of the article, because what it ended up saying, the article was, during year one, they exceeded expectations thanks to sales. And in year two, they also exceeded expectations because they double dipped on Game Pass and they released it on PC. And on PC, it sold very well. And, you know, double dipping is a no-brainer. Peak sales, throw your game on a subscription service for that little extra cash. It really goes a long way. But day one, you've got Glenn Schofield, you've got guys from Remedy, you've got loads of developers who are saying that it just financially doesn't make sense for them. And so, go figure that Microsoft have to buy these studios now. And they've decided to buy Activision. What I think they should have done personally, and this is just my own opinion, and anyone can comment in on the panel, you know, your views if you disagree, or just go for it. But I think MS could and should have gone about spending $70 billion very differently, but rather just to actually fund and support third-party developments and independent studios to make quality-timed and permanent exclusives for their platform instead of buying them. That's what Sony does.
That would be... I was going to say, that's exactly what Sony's
that would have been far more competitive. Yeah, if we can't attract developers to our platform without striking deals with them because their games just don't sell well enough, make a banger and fund it. That will attract people. Yep. Make an absolute banger of a game. That would have been far more competitive and supportive of the industry. Instead of buying and consolidating the industry, rather fund the industry, fund these developers to make a quality game that's exclusive to the Xbox platform through a second-party deal, a second-party partnership.
Arrangement,
like Scalebound was going to be, had it not gone to shit. And you know, I just think they really $70 billion for this. It's just
it's the $70 billion is bled out their cash reserves as well. So they've gone from, at the end of last quarter, they had $105 billion in cash equivalents and short-term investments, and they still haven't paid for Activision. And Microsoft, because of the current situation in the climate, they're only banking about $1 billion a quarter, $1.5 billion per quarter, because of how much they have to fund. So you think about the net profit that they made, $20-something billion last quarter. Of that 23 or 24 billion or whatever it was, of that 24 billion, they only put $1.5 of it in the bank. That's how much out after they get to their net profit that they have to put money into other areas of the business to keep it running. Like, it's not like, they make $20 billion a quarter so they could buy PlayStation after 6 quarters. Like, no, fuck off. Read the damn statements properly before you open your mouth and make stupid comments like that. But if, they've got 105 at the end of they think end of March quarter 2023 is when Activision will get cleared. So they're still September, 8 months away. So March quarter, they'll put another 3 or 4 billion in. So they might have $110 billion if they're lucky by the end of the March quarter. Wheel $70 odd billion out to pay for Activision. Microsoft will only have about $35 to $40 billion left in their cash reserves. So they need $20 billion a month, $20 billion a quarter to operate. So they only have $20 billion in buying power, depending on what PlayStation does between now and then. Sony does between now and then. Sony could have more spending money than Microsoft has at the end of the March quarter.
Yeah.
So these people that say, they got deep pockets, they can afford to do whatever they like. So no, they can't. Because that's the shit that the shareholders look at. And that's the sort of stuff that makes shareholders say to the board at the general meetings, you've got to do X, Y, Z, or we're going to take our money somewhere else. You know, and a lot of people open their mouths and make comments without understanding how the whole system works. Whether you like the system or not, that's the rules we're playing by. That's the game we're in. And, you know, again, if people just keep saying, oh, but they do it because they like it, so just fuck off. Some of the management might be doing it because they like you, but they're backing themselves into a corner with this acquisition. They're all or nothing bet. They're going all in on this, trying to play catch up to get to the position that they think they're in. And it's risking so much. And I'm not saying this as a Sony fanboy or anything. I'm just saying this as a general person who observes this stuff. And there's other analysts that have said to me quietly the same thing. What the hell are they doing? How the hell did they get this thing through? This is a no-win situation for them.
Bro, this definitely isn't a fanboy perspective. If anything, this is an authoritative perspective. This is coming from a financial business analyst. I mean, there's no greater authority on this kind of topic than you. I'm just learning.
There is, but they work. There is, but they work at Sony, and they work at Microsoft, and they work at Amazon. Like I'm sorry. I know I go off on.
It's definitely more authoritative than Tom Warren, anyway. Shout out to that guy, man, with his tinfoil hat. I swear down, him and Michael Does Life are related. But like, he claiming that the C.M.A. were kind of bought by Sony to raise this concern because this concern doesn't exist. I'm like, what planet are you on? This is a very real concern.
Could you imagine that phone call though? Could you imagine that? Jim Ryan rings up the chairman of the C.M.A. and Jim says, I want you to investigate this deal. The chair of the C.M.A. probably tells him in his Cockney accent to go fuck himself. What makes them think that the C.M.A. is going to be behested to anyone? When those guys don't care. They don't care. They have a job to do. They tick and flick. They're regulated to the hilt and they apply those regulations.
And who think even Jim Ryan would have the balls to try and bribe the very company, the very organisation that shuts businesses down for bribery?
Well, think about this. Look at the expansion progress that PlayStation has made. Where have all their really big acquisitions been? Firesprite, where's that located? Wushu and Lucid Games
in the
are two
UK,
that are
in
on
Liverpool, isn't it? In Liverpool, Firesprite.
Yeah, both of those, Wushu and Lucid Studios. Those two are on the hit list. Where are they located? In the UK.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like they fire from the hip with their comments based on their irrational emotions. And I'd love to get DeWolf in to talk about this further because he's done some research and some of the conversations I've had offline with him.
DeWolf. I know DeWolf. We'll have to get him on.
Yeah. He's I say he's a genius. He reckons he's not, but he's quite intelligent man.
He's a clever guy.
You know, he is. But they say, oh, they bought him out. So no, this is fairly standard process. They do this to a lot of different things. PlayStation is not going to rock the boat and go and bribe or anything like that. One, it's almost impossible to bribe anyone in the UK at the moment, or in any of the EU countries. Very difficult to bribe anyone because of the way that things are structured over there. And any attempts get seen very, very quickly. And second of all, he's not going to play... I'll try and explain this without ranting forever. PlayStation or Sony as a broader organisation are not interested one way or the other, so to speak, in the outcome of this. If it falls in favour that Activision gets... And I say this from the way that they're making a lot of their statements and the wording that they're using, particularly with the FTC and some of these other major organisations, regulators. If Activision goes to Microsoft, well, that's the play, that's the plan, but it won't have an impact to the supply of games to PlayStation straight away. We're talking the back end of 2024, early 2025, assuming the deal clears in March 2023.
Yeah.
March quarter next year. So PlayStation and Sony, as a broader example, will have the time to react, to plug those gaps if the impact to revenue that they got to plug across the board is, say, 500 million, net 500 million, because there's cost offsetting and all the rest of it. If their net impact is 500 million in a year, that, Bungie's next game, whatever Fire Sprite's working on, whatever Devolver's working on, not Devolver, Deviation, there's stuff in the pipeline that's due out around about that time. And when you look back at the timelines, you think, well, yeah, Microsoft and Phil said, the Activision deal came about in a very abrupt and quick way. It was only a few days between the initial phone call, and a week later we're signing the deal and all the rest of it. But Sony's and PlayStation have been looking at becoming unreliant on key things from a business continuity standpoint, hence the reason why they've got pretty much the dream team for making Call of Duty working over at Deviation, and it's being funded by PlayStation.
They've got you on your first debut on this show, Folky, you highlighted three key individuals, like the Holy Trinity of business people spearheading initiatives at PlayStation Studios, who are basically, the industry has a lot to thank them for. And it seems to me like, I don't remember the three people that in particular. One of them, I know it's thanks to him that Resident Evil exists, but I don't know if you can recall those people.
It would have been Kichiro Urata.
Yeah, that's
Lin Tao, and the third. It's the third guy's name. Yeah. I can never pronounce it.
But those people have clearly been hard at work, because the whole company seems future-proof. They forever kind of one step ahead, kind of preparing for tomorrow. It was on your debut that the blueprints of the Backbone were released, and people were speculating a new handheld. And you rightly said you reckon it's actually just a handheld device to go on a mobile phone. But yeah, it's like they've just bought a mobile studio, so that they can focus on PlayStation IPs being created for mobile.
Yeah.
And it's like rather than PlayStation Studios.
Yeah.
Go on, sorry.
Akihiro Kizimoto was the third person. He's the director of entertainment services architecture. But then, got people like Connie Booth, Glenn Nash, Eric Lampel, Assad Krizibash. Look through some of the list of the people that are in senior positions leading the ship over there, and you go, holy shit, I didn't realise they work there or still work there.
Fitch is rating
quite impressive.
Fitch is just up their rating to A-, because of how impressive they are.
That's the first time since just before Sony. Well, I think it's the first time they've been in the A category ratings since the turn of the millennium. When back in the right at the turn of the 2000, Sony was the world's largest company.
Incredible.
So Sony knows how to act in the top spot worldwide. They're not idiots, and there's a lot of people that still work at Sony that were there when they went from number one and crash to we're nearly going to have to shut the doors. Mm-hmm. So everyone at PlayStation remembers the PS3. Oh, they're acting arrogant. They're going to have that happen. They're going to know there's too many people that still work at that organisation who know where the limits are.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, to get back to what I was saying. Sony's Activision goes through. Yes, there's some downside to PlayStation and Sony as a general, but it can be covered. They've got time to react. If it doesn't go through, well, there's no major issues there. That's just all upside. All the risk is being worn by Microsoft on this one, and there's very minimal upside and a lot of downside on it. So this just shows to me that Phil doesn't know what he's doing, and the people advising Phil are just as bad, in my professional opinion. But then you look at the wording that PlayStation and is used, and what Sony's used in a lot of these articles that we've seen, a lot of these reports, even though we don't actually see the proper report, we see media regurgitated
Paraphrase,
stuff. So there's no way
loose paraphrasals.
Paraphrase. Yeah, and you ever notice that the loose paraphrasing comes from other languages that gets translated using Google Translate? So there's no way knowing if that's exactly what was said or intended to be said. But the C.M.A is the first one outside of the US where we've actually gotten in English as its base language what they're intending to do. But you look at the wording that Sony's used every time that they've submitted something as a challenge point to it. The wording is very specific in if it doesn't go through, it's not going to be harmful to Sony's acquisition plans going forward, because the questions they're asking or they're stating are specific around cloud gaming or streaming services or restriction to entry, or is it going to make an impact on the profitability of others? Is it going to have an impact here, have an impact there? If Activision does go through and the FTC go, yep, sure, no worries, it's all good because of X, Y, Z, that could, depending on the wording, and a lot of analysts that I speak to think that the wording is going to be in a particular manner, it will allow PlayStation and Sony as a broader to go, you fucking beauty, we can go and get whoever the hell we want and not have to worry about spending billions of dollars getting it through regulators, to the point where they could go and get cyber agent, they could go and they could go and acquire all 6 of the Japanese ones if they wanted to, and none of the other foreign markets could, the FTC could have no say in it. Obviously, the Japanese government would have a say in it, but the FTC could have no say in it. They could go and get Take-Two, and the FTC couldn't blink. Like the opportunity that opens up for Sony, like Sony could go and get Warner Brothers.
I think Sony approached. Sony seemed to approach the Japanese market differently to the Western. I've noticed, like, they buy shares. Like, they've now got quite a substantial share in From Software, and it's like, they make shitloads of exclusive content by partnering up with second party publishers and developers like Square Enix with Final Fantasy. You've got Grand Blue. It's impressive.
Yeah, so there's a big split in the business models, and Japan is very protected. The Japanese government protects the Japanese companies very heavily. So for PlayStation to lose out on game supply from Japanese companies at the moment, there's no real threat. So there's no real rush. But if the opportunity presents itself, they will take a position to, the one with FromSoft. So Cyber Agent and PlayStation and Sony have got it's like a 1.9% share in Katakawa, and there's a partnership arrangement there. So there's involvement and investment in Katakawa for some. That's the parent company that owns FromSoft. So that's one piece. So PlayStation, or Sony rather, gets to see what's going on there, but that's got broader implications around manga and anime and access to those IP to be able to produce a broader thing rather than games. The investment directly into FromSoft, it wasn't from new shares, it was from the sale of current shares by Katakawa to Tencent and PlayStation, PlayStation or Sony. Sorry, I can't remember who bought it now. I think it was PlayStation. Anyway, that is an indicator where they're not trying to raise funds. They're raising funds, but not by issuing new shares. They're raising funds by selling current shares, which means that Katakawa gets the cash, not FromSoft. Mm-hmm. So it's quite an interesting point. So it's indicating to me that Katakawa may be prepared to sell off FromSoft, or it may be prepared to sell off other parts of their business as well. Whether they're being told, or whether they're being asked, or they're doing it by choice, I don't know. But what that does is, because Tencent's involved in that as well, Tencent and NetEase do pose somewhat of a threat to game ownership and direction in Japan, because they don't have consoles. Obviously, if they bought out FromSoft, the chances of them taking the game off PlayStation is very, very, very slim. But still, if you're Sony and PlayStation, you want to have have an ability to block something if you need it. So yeah, but there's no rush. Like the end goal here is supply of quality games to the platform. So if PlayStation's getting the games that they want, the only thing they need to do is protect their heritage games from those third parties. So, the two major IP from FromSoft that are exclusive to PlayStation, PlayStation owns the IP. So they can take it somewhere else if they need to. Because they've got the blueprint. They've already done it with Demon Souls.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at Capcom.
And Bloodborne.
Street Fighter 6. And, yeah. Street Fighter 6 wouldn't exist without Street Fighter 5 having been funded by PlayStation.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know, PlayStation doesn't own the IP, but Capcom's not going to take those games off. Where else are they going to play them? Who else is going to buy them? Square's another great example. Square's got an absolute slate of games coming out the back end of this year that are all going on to PlayStation. And the key thing a lot of people forget is if it gets sold on PlayStation through the PS Store, Sony, PlayStation gets 30%. Bang. They've spent no money getting the game anywhere near the joint, but they get 30%. Yes, they've got PlayStation's responsible for the store and all the infrastructure around the digital distribution. So they've got the data centers and the cloud banks and all the infrastructure to pay for. But if you're looking just at the revenue side of this, all third-party games give them 30%. First-party games generate a lot of revenue, but they don't generate a lot of. They also generate a lot of lead-up cost.
Mm-hmm.
So if they've got all the Japanese studios powering games out through the PlayStation Network, and they're getting their cut out of that, and the cost side to it, the more they get, the more favourable the cost ratio becomes. So the lower if you've got one game on the whole network, is going to cost you the same amount as distributing 100 games on the same network, but your revenue goes through the roof. There's no mad rush to go and bring all this cost in-house, because they'll lose that revenue stream. It'll be a completely different structure of revenue. And then you've got longer lead time costs and you've got all this other stuff. So they will make deals where they need to protect the supply of games or protect the heritage games. But people that, respectfully, those that sit there and scream, Sony must buy, PlayStation must buy Square Enix to make sure that they don't lose Final Fantasy. Where's Final Fantasy going to go? Like, if you look at the big three out of Square Enix, it's Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy, and Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah.
Does anybody genuinely think that those three games and the next rounds of those games is not going to show up on PlayStation? Like, it's there's no mad rush to go and acquire all these Japanese studios, because there's no pressure to get it done from a business perspective. Yeah, that's not to say that if the opportunity arises that they'll do it, like they've shown when they did with FromSoft. If PlayStation has the opportunity to buy FromSoft out completely, they probably would, but it would depend on the price. Like they say, 2019 or 2018 or whatever it was, they passed up on buying them, and that's a massive mistake. Well, no, it was earlier than that, because it's when Shuhei was in charge. Must have been mid to late 2000s. When Shuhei was in charge, they hadn't become the studio with the following that they are. I think they'd just done Demon Souls and what's the other one series they do? I can't remember it now. They just started
it's
out.
like a Gundam, like a Mech Warrior.
Yeah.
Thing.
So they hadn't established themselves as the powerhouse that they are with the following that they've got. They hadn't done that yet. So it's great to sit here and say, they missed out, they should have done it. But they wouldn't have achieved what they've done if they had to become a PlayStation studio. Like, they would not have, through that era, wouldn't have happened. And you look at the management of Japanese studios throughout that mid to late PS3 and most of the PS4 era, it doesn't show a glowing record. So for them to sort of be hands off but get the game supplied, that's not an issue. That's fine. But elsewhere, like, you look at the acquisitions that they're doing, quite smart to spend the money where they're spending it, and they're getting great results out of it. But sorry to circle back to what I was talking about. The way that the whole wording from Sony around this Activision acquisition thing is basically setting it up so when the wording comes through on the findings, Sony's going to be able to do stuff. People will complain about it, and they'll just point back at the precedent set by this and go, well, you said this and this and this with the Activision deal, and this is less than that, and we're taking less market share away, and we're doing this and this and this. So if you want to rule against us, we'll just argue it in court because you set the precedent. Because a lot of these regulators, it can be argued in court.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, shout out to Jonathan Martinez in the chat. He says he's still disappointed that Sony isn't interested in buying Japanese talent. But Jonathan, though I hear you, you have to appreciate like what Folky was saying. Where would these Japanese games that are being made currently go if not PlayStation? They go to PlayStation anyway. The vast majority, if not Nintendo. And these games, from these Eastern publishers and developers, they're still being made regardless. And any games that PlayStation approach to have made are timed exclusives anyway. I mean, apart from mere bragging rights on Twitter, like juvenile bragging rights on Twitter, I don't think buying these publishers or studios in Japan would, or in the East in general, would amount to anything different. Arc Raiders, a Korean studio, a South Korean studio, is coming to PlayStation free to play. Would you want Arc Raiders to be exclusive? Why? It's why it's still being made regardless. You're still going to play it, and so the point is this. Why I think PlayStation, like Folky was saying, has held back buying a lot of the Eastern talent is because they don't need to. They're secure. The games are being made regardless of whether Sony own them or not. They're coming to PlayStation, so nothing's being lost in them not owning these Japanese studios. It just diminishes the impact of, in terms of, I can't remember how you described it, Folky, the financial kind of the financial pathway, the way that costs are accrued and dealt with. There's less of that liability on Sony to need to worry about. They just profit passively on games that come to their platform that they haven't assisted in the development of, and the games that they have funded the development of, they still get published on their platform anyway. So they just, it's, and this kind of ties into Smooth claiming, shout out to Kid Smooth, man, he's a funny one. He is entertaining. He wrote a letter, bless his heart, to the C.M.A. basically explaining how Sony do more damage to their with studios and partnerships than Microsoft does with publisher acquisitions. And I think to myself, Sony does more damage. They I wrote it here, they actually fund the creation of new IPs and games that wouldn't exist if they hadn't. They're a platform that developers use to make profit from by releasing the games that they make on it, because the games sell on that platform. And, and this is the point Smooth and a lot of other people are conveniently forgetting. Starfield, Doom, Elder Scrolls, Wolfenstein, Fallout, Call of Duty, these games, Jez made this point the other night on TSGP, shout out to Jez. He said all these would still exist if Microsoft had not bought them. They would still exist. They're just now permanent exclusives. There's nothing that's been gained from this acquisition for Xbox other than they're now exclusive. They still would have existed. Yes, Starfield included. That was in development before Microsoft bought Bethesda. That was a Bethesda passion project, not an Xbox passion project. So let's not kid ourselves here. Final Fantasy VII wouldn't have existed if Sony hadn't paid for it to be funded. Somebody else might have, But Sony had that vision. They partnered with Square Enix and asked them, and approached them, and together they decided to remake Final Fantasy VII. It being therefore logically an exclusive isn't harming the industry. I mean, Xbox could approach Square and pay them to make them a Final Fantasy exclusive if they wanted to. Final Fantasy isn't a PlayStation-owned IP, so I don't understand where the damage is here on Sony's part.
Now, that's a good comment, though, because if Xbox approached Square Enix and said, we want the next Final Fantasy to be exclusive to Xbox, you would see PlayStation or Sony as a broader point. You wouldn't hear it, but you would see some kind of reaction where they take a large ownership stake or buy Square Enix. Final Fantasy is that important to PlayStation and Sony that they would get that kind of reaction, and Square Enix would know that, and that's part of the reason why they've all the big six in Japan have got the same common shareholders. The only variance is who the major family ownership of the organisations is. But 60 to 70% of the big six in Japan have all got the same shareholders what Sony does. So should there be a need to do something to protect their heritage legacy that brings them so much in that respect, they don't have to spend a cent in cash. They just do a share swap. And then because of the monopolistic laws and how they are applied, you can easily get around those in Japan by saying, well, it's the same common shareholder, so the voting power is no different. There's no monopolization of the market because the ultimate power exists within the same people anyway. And there's a divestment point there, especially if they say, well, we only want the gaming, anime, and all the rest of it. They can take the theme parks and pachinko machines and all the other publishing bits and pieces and split them out and sell them off. But yeah, there was a comment I saw in the chat. Can't remember who it was now. About PlayStation and involvement and all the rest of it with Japanese studios.
It was probably Jonathan
and just to touch on something
Martinez.
you said. Yeah, touch on something you said. Well, I'll give you 4 studios that are either confirmed to be or from job listings working on something specifically for PlayStation only. There's Bokeh Game Studios, which is formed by the
They did Forbidden Siren and
yeah.
That's
the head of Team Siren.
Yeah.
That's formed by the heads of Team Siren who were at Japan Studios. So Bokeh is doing something. They're doing Split Ahead, but they're also doing something else for PlayStation. Mutan is doing a remake of a much loved PlayStation-owned IP, Japanese JRPG IP. If you go back through and have a look at the list of PlayStation JRPGs from PS1 era, there's a couple. There's not a lot. There's a couple. So make of that what you will. JP Games Studio is also working on something specifically for PlayStation. And Unseen Studio is also working on something for PlayStation. So
Folky with the receipts.
You talk about, there's 4 studios that are just climbing over themselves to work with PlayStation. Now, that's great, and that's console, but the problem that they have in Japan, which PlayStation has in Japan, is the market shifted from console gaming to gaming on the go. So when we look at console gaming, and there's an issue with supply and there's all this other crap, but the PS4 only barely did 10 million in Japan. And the Switch is selling like freaking hotcakes. And you look at the metrics of it, mobile gaming and gaming on the go is over 80% of the market, the value of the market in Japan. So what do? Does PlayStation try and change the market, which means you're trying to change consumer sentiment and consumer buying habits and consumer desires? Or do you generate a mobile gaming division and start pumping out stuff to feed that? Which means you're not trying to change the market, you're trying to take advantage of the market. Which one do you think's the smarter investment route?
Facts.
And that's the answer. That's why they generated a mobile gaming division, and that's why Aniplex and Sony Music has been pumping out. I think they've got 5 of the top 20 mobile games in Japan already Sony owned. And worldwide, they've got like 3 in the top 10 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they make a chunk of cash out of it. But the problem they have is they don't. Yes, they've got access to the broader IP because it's all within Sony. But Sony Gaming wants to make a big push into that marketplace. And that's why they created the mobile gaming division. And that's why they got the person who set up Apple Gaming on board. And that's why they went and bought Savage Studios the other day. You know, you look at the talent that's involved with Savage Studios, they could quite easily turn that into 6 or 7 teams and be pumping out 2 or 3 games a year into their mobile division. And the expansion points at Fire Sprite and expansion points at other places. Mm-hmm. There's a whisper going around that Deviation's first-person shooter game could be picked up shouldn't be picked up, could be presented and launched day one on console, PC, and mobile, with crossplay available across all 3 devices.
That's nuts.
And be a game that would make the next Call of Duty look like freaking Halo Infinite. They don't have to put that level of effort in, but PlayStation chooses to.
Facts. Like, if Sony were in it purely like fuck the culture, let's just make money, what are they doing in the console business? Because why aren't they doing what Nintendo do? You know, scrump on the outgoings, you know, minimize as much as possible the outgoings, and don't depreciate the value of products down the line in sales. And you know, Nintendo Switch is a lot cheaper to make. It's a lot cheaper hardware, a similar cost, you know, range. It's pretty expensive, and it's you know, the games don't depreciate or hardly. I mean, they make way less revenue, and like you said, but they make more profit, and it's like have a greater profit margin, and that's because of that. You know, Sony are in it for largely. They have a passionate culture. They're passionate about the culture, and they're passionate about the game industry, console industry. So, you know, I think, you know, if Sony were just greedy and selfish, they wouldn't be. Their profit margins would be way higher. Put it that way.
If PlayStation followed the Nintendo route, they would have a profit margin that would be huge.
Facts.
If PlayStation followed the Xbox route, they would not have a profit margin at all. And that's, you know, you can sit here and go on. I could go on for days about comparisons on business plans and all the rest of those mobile. The main thing.
So go on.
Sorry. The main to tie the whole thing back to the original questions and the original points. The C.M.A. is investigating the Activision deal, not because of what it will do to current players. It's mostly because of what it will do to the market for incoming new entrants, and making sure that there's a fair and there's a pathway in for new entrants. What does it mean in terms of impact to Sony as a broader piece? Sony's, you know, there's a outcome that's beneficial to Sony, but at the moment, the way it sits, if it gets through, there's no massive risk side for PlayStation and Sony. There's Xbox and Microsoft are bearing a huge chunk of cost and a huge chunk of the risk, and most of it's downside. If it doesn't go through, well, PlayStation and Sony get to continue to have that engagement and relationship with Activision, and remember 12 months ago. Well, remember 12 months ago, everyone was screaming at PlayStation to cut ties with Activision because Bobby's an asshole. Well, these are the same people are now saying that you can't lose Activision. Like, fucking make your minds up. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, and the whole honouring the contract, that's just lip service.
Yeah.
It would cost him billions of dollars to get out of it, and then what's he gained from spending billions of dollars? He's losing more money.
Exactly.
And what do you think? What do you think PlayStation would do if the contract got cancelled and they got $1.5 billion for that? What do you think they do with that $1.5 billion? They certainly wouldn't go and buy a single studio with it. They might go and pick up 7, 8 new smaller studios. They might go and invest the money further into other projects. They might continue their expansion plans. That $1 billion would certainly go a long way to helping them backfill that hole that they've got because of the FX rate movements.
And you have no idea how much Savage Studios will grow under PlayStation with that level of focus and output. I mean, they could end up being spearheading video games on the next handheld device that Sony make if they ever choose to make a Vita 2 or whatever. Like the level of Sony have built up studios from small beginnings to making them titans in the industry. Look at Visual Arts and what they've achieved. And it's no different here. At least they're having a dedicated studio to do mobile games, not expecting studios to take time away from their current console games to work on a cash grab, and that's the difference here. Just to summarize, because I know your time's a little limited, bro, and you're looking at you needing to go soon. Let's just summarize this for people listening in. The C.M.A, have they been bribed by Sony?
No. No.
As you brought up, an amazing point. The C.M.A said themselves that they're concerned about the future accessibility of new what's the word? Like cloud streaming services, new services.
New entrants into cloud. New entrants into cloud streaming and subscription-based services.
Exactly.
For gaming.
Because there's a pool of third-party IP that can be acquired for your bespoke streaming service if you're a new streaming service, and if Microsoft is taking all of that third-party IP to make it all exclusive, what are you left with? It is threatening the ability for new entrants to come in to the fold, and that's a very, very valid point that I hadn't thought of, but C.M.A did actually say that you highlighted, Falky. Not to mention the fact that they also raised Phil's betrayal of his own words when he promised.
Phil's Bethesda betrayal.
Yeah, honestly, we have no intention to take these games away from players. We want more people to play, not less people. For him to then say this acquisition is about bringing you great exclusives on platforms where Game Pass exists. It couldn't have been more contradictory. And so that just kind of gives you why would you trust him when he did that with his whole bluff about Call of Duty not being a big deal? It makes the equivalency of the entirety of Bungie's as a publisher, their entire cost as a publisher, their value each year. It makes in money each year. It's a huge IP. It's a huge deal, as well as all these other IPs that have been acquired. And you've, beautifully illustrated, to people listening in, how, in contrast, Sony here aren't focused on IP. They're building talent and focus on talent. They can create new IPs. They've had no problem doing that. They own a lot of IPs as it is because they've made it. But no, that's a fantastic point. As for it all tying together with, Microsoft trying to buy Activision, well, it's kind of backed up the reasons why by not only what we've discussed tonight, but also the fact that, Callisto Protocol developer himself, Glenn, he head of Striking Distance Studios, has said it's monetarily just not feasible for independent studios unless they monetize in-game those games. They're not fit for a day one subscription service model. It's just very difficult to justify financially. Yeah,
so you've got Glenn Schofield said that. John Drazy's also made that comment.
Yep.
and you've had
Remedy.
a few others that have made those comments too. The guy that does the Abe's Odyssey, what was it?
Abe's Odyssey, yeah. PS Plus
Abe's Odyssey.
killed sales for him.
So that's slightly different though, because he took the cash up front and put it in the PS Plus because there was a delay, so he got paid. But then with that game, they were expecting to do 100,000 units sold, and it did 2 million units played. So how much of those 2 million units would have actually transitioned into sales?
That's similar to John Drazy's point, Yeah.
There's a known unknown. Do you take the cash now and forego the risk, or do you take the risk and and it can come down to I got some information around Stray where they got made an offer that was decent, and they chose to take the offer of putting it on the PS Plus.
Do you know the offer?
I do, but I'm not allowed to disclose it.
Fair enough. But it was more than the game cost to make.
I believe it was slightly more.
Wow.
But then think about, that's just the PlayStation bit. They also put that thing out on Steam, and Steam was selling like nuts, and that's where they made their money.
Facts.
So, but then they say, again, it comes down to what's the expectation of how many people are actually going to play this game versus what we think we can sell it. So there's all that bits and pieces as well, but I think you've just summarised the rest of it quite well. But the funniest thing about it, I still giggle about this, was Microsoft's going to spend $70 billion to buy Activision, and that means Call of Duty's potentially going day one. Yeah, everybody's rejoicing. Yeah, it's great. It justifies the price tag, blah blah blah. And then Phil comes out and goes, "Oh, Call of Duty's not that big a deal." Yeah. And all of a sudden, everyone goes, "Well, why are you paying so much for it?" And then he's got to backtrack and go, "Oh shit, I've put myself in a corner here because I can't keep my foot out of my mouth. It's either a big deal or it's not a big deal. Oh no, with Activision, we're going to buy it because we want mobile gaming and cloud gaming and all the stuff that they're doing in PC and mobile." And then you get the C.M.A. comes out and goes, "Well, if you're going to pinch up that much of the particular specific market that basically has you and no one else in it, for a very good reason, you need to justify why you think that taking other potential suppliers of games into that market away from them." And he just, every time he opens his mouth, he fucking sticks his foot in it big time. If they got any brains, they'd tell him to shut up and not let him talk till the deal's done. And I'm pretty sure I said that 6 months ago too. They just need to tell Phil to shut up and don't talk.
Yeah. No, absolute facts. We have one last topic. I don't know if you have time to stick around for Halo.
About 5 minutes.
5 minutes. All right, let's address this. By the way, I'm conscious that Retro and Wilhelm, you guys have been so quiet. I feel terrible. Like, have you got much to say that you want to talk about? You've been so.
When David's talking, I shut up and listen. I'm constantly learning what's happening. I don't need to be talking while he's.
It is honestly. I'm the same. Like, I just think, when we have Folky on, it's too invaluable to not just have him.
It's a learning experience, bro.
Exactly.
And I appreciate that stuff, you know what I mean? So I tend to just kind of quiet myself down and just listen.
Especially regarding the topic, especially regarding the topics, it's like one big playground for a dude, and I just want to let him thrive.
I love it. I
appreciate that. I do. I am conscious that when I'm prattling on here, that a lot of other people aren't getting an input. And I do apologise, and thank you for you're allowing me to just carry on the way that I do.
You shouldn't apologise, bro. Honestly, like we can always give our opinions, but we don't always have the time to listen to you, and the information that you provide. And when we have the opportunity to do that, we take it. So nothing to apologise for. To summarise your point about which I thought was great. You know, I mentioned my take on the whole honoring the contract. You know, that's a regular ammo thrown from kind of, I don't know, Microsoft Activision acquisition apologists who say Phil's a good boy. He honored the contracts between Sony and Bethesda. Let's just recap what that was for listeners. You know, we discussed that honoring the contract doesn't mean allowing the contract to go ahead. They cannot disallow the contract. The contract is legally binding unless Sony accept a cancellation expense, unless they accept the compensation of an offer from Microsoft to cancel, or the cancellation clause will have, you know, expenditures covering, you know, altogether, not just the cancellation clause, but also the potential buyout cost to cancel the contracts from Microsoft. You're looking at, you know, hundreds of millions. You're looking at, you know, the loss of profits of sales. So much development time just gone out the window. And, you know, Volky sums it up here. Honoring contracts means, and I can actually get his tweet up because I asked him, you know, how he would word it. Because I put this, honoring means not resisting with a counter offer. That's it. And Volky responded, honoring contracts means just that, not seeking to change or exit the contract early, just letting it run its course. As for ending them early for those two Bethesda titles, yes, they could have cancelled them. However, it would have cost them a shitload, as the clawback clauses would cover all development and marketing costs to be repaid, and the termination clauses, that's what I was trying to think of, that word, termination clauses would seek to cover all future expected revenues, plus costs associated with administration and possibly recoveries for future placements of games into services. And that's kind of a summary of that, you know, Phil wasn't being a hero. He was just being a sensible kind of dude who's not risk PR and, you know, a PR suicide and a huge financial expense that would completely have defeated the point of the games being made in the first place. So now that we've got that out of the way, I don't know if there's anything the panel want to add to that before we get onto Halo.
We can go to Halo.
Yeah. So basically, I want to give Leviathan Gamer a shout out. He's been going through a really hard time, guys. He used to be a panel member on our show. Unfortunately, he lost his brother to cancer, his younger brother, and, you know, it's really took him hard. He's been through a shitload of tough times, and he took a break from Twitter as well. But he's back. He's back on Twitter. He's not back on the show. I think he's just doing his own thing. Fair play to him. But he shared some really insightful info with me. And long story short, people are changing their job descriptions to sustain those who work at Halo. For those who don't know, Halo recently received news that the co-op, split screen couch co-op has been cancelled and scrapped. Interestingly though, it works perfectly fine thanks to a glitch on Xbox Series X. People can actually access it on a glitch. So the question there remains, why the hell is it being skipped? Why is it being scrapped? And go on.
Probably because Xbox One can't run it.
Exactly. Well, that's actually what's been suggested.
Right.
Yeah, you're spot on. So this comes from Halo Creation. He put, so after checking on Series X, the menu glitches to play Halo Infinite campaign. Split screen still work. No crashing cutscenes, no issues with AI. Never thought I would have to go through this to play with friends at home. This raises the question, what was the roadblock to get this eventually? Performance issues, notably on Xbox One, maybe. Problems with individual progression system, mission replay. John Lineman, Digital Foundry techie, he said, "Here's a demonstration of split screen working on co-op working on Series X in Halo Infinite. I'm curious to know what doesn't work. Could it be that it's the Xbox One?" He then asked, "Would it be okay for you and me, the public, if co-op was on Series X and S as an exclusive mode for current gen consoles, but it skipped Xbox One last gen hardware?" And my take on that is that the Xbox One should be scrapped eventually. People bought the Series consoles for a reason. Let them have it. But it's just shocking that 343 have had to resort to cancelling their roadmap for split screen co-op because of what? Well, what's the issue? Well, Leviathan has highlighted that a mere 10 people are working on the multiplayer at the moment. It's a 10-man team, guys. And why would Microsoft invest more when they don't really know what to do with it? At the end of the day, it's pretty bleak.
Do you know what pisses me off the most about that game, Willie? All they had to do was make a Halo 6 and make it decent.
Mm-hmm.
See all of this splitting up the single player and multiplayer and turning it into free to play and having microtransactions for everything. It literally just ripped the soul out of Halo. But it really has. And the sad fact is, if they had just stuck to a normal release, it probably would have been much more successful and taken on by the fan base a lot better. Because it's just been mistake after mistake after mistake, broken promises after broken promises. That it's not good enough, man.
At this point, I think Halo needs a new developer. Because ever since 343 has been at helm, series has been just filled with controversy. Like, Halo 4 has its fans, but then came Halo 5, which was already a very controversial entry in the series, and now we have Halo Infinite, which is just this massive shit show, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Like seeing the roadmap, before that, Halo Infinite struggled to hold its own, to stand on its own 2 feet, because support for that game was just so far and few between that eventually the player base for that game started to shrink to the point where even the Master Chief Collection had a higher player base than the Halo Infinite multiplayer. And now seeing that new roadmap, you're showing it right now on stream. It's like such a weird roadmap. See what they're advertising. Like Match XP, they literally advertise highlighting Match XP.
It's a skeletal roadmap, and when I mean that, Leviathan, he's given me a lot of info, and some of the stuff I can't say, but it's pretty much guaranteed from what has been seen. I mean, there were job listings that just disappeared for Halo, like 30, just went completely. It was so you couldn't apply for them anymore, and it wasn't that they were taken; they just were scrapped. They're literally slowing down and sustaining Halo Infinite. What that literally means is they're letting it die whilst they focus on the next iteration. This whole 10-year roadmap is gone. There's no more 10-year Halo Infinite live service bullshit. There's likely going to either be Halo 6 or they're all going to go into working on Call of Duty. 343 is going to be merged with Activision.
So you mean to tell me that what we're seeing here is like Halo basically being put on life support for a bit before
that's pretty much it.
What the fuck?
That's pretty much
Halo.
It.
Okay, that explains a lot. That explains literally that. Okay, now so many things make sense now. Oh man, I still can't believe it. That split screen's missing is basically was also like a big indicator to something like not being wrong. Like, I mean, I know a lot of people like who will say, but split screen's so outdated and you can do split screen online. I mean, yeah, when you have like no friends. I mean, this like literally like an experience out of this world. It's just a nice experience when you have like a couple of buddies at your home. You have to drink a couple of sodas and just do couch co-op. Like every time like I have cousins in my house, when my good old cousins visit me, we boot up Serious Sam and play split screen deathmatch, and we have a dang old time. It's fun as hell. And seeing that missing in Halo, and even like and that feature, like that game mode, even being like a huge staple of the series and a largely popular mode, is just pretty much like we'd say in Germany, an Armutszeugnis. Like it's incredible. And then seeing like that roadmap right there, like even them advertising that they implement Match XP, but not only Match XP, Match XP beta, a fucking beta. Like what
Yeah. Well,
what kind of a code is that? Like what's spaghetti code?
Facts. The roadmap basically indicates, and Leviathan said this, that Halo Infinite should have released November 2022, and it, you know, at the earliest. But we know the reasons. We said on this show about 6 months ago the dev cycle that Halo Infinite went through, probably close to a year ago now, and how it was just an absolute. It was shocking. It was a clusterfuck. And Halo 6 is hopefully going to happen, but basically this 10-man team working on sustaining the multiplayer, that's kind of the core of the team that are kind of having an input. The rest are like environmental artists and technical engineers, but they don't play an engine. They, you know, you don't play an engine, you play game content. So you know, they have 2 multiplayer level designers left. 4 in total worked on the game, which is why it has so little. Honestly, like what Microsoft did to 343 with the contractees and how they disappeared, you know, after the contracts expired, the little support that Microsoft gave Halo, they killed it before it even launched. They're responsible for this. You know, they have a lack of direction when the campaign started. Although the campaign had a mostly cohesive direction post 2018, it was rushed. Multiplayer didn't really have a cohesive direction until 2020. Why hire staff or something? Leviathan. Sorry, bro.
Do you know what's really scary?
What?
How similar the Halo story is to Crackdown 3's.
Yeah.
As in terms of the development.
That's a good point.
And what happened.
It's like they began their projects around the time that Microsoft just didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
And it says, and then Lev said, after all this, why hire staff for something you don't really know how to make yet? I am pretty sure they are moving onto a Halo 7, targeting a 2024-2025, or a Halo 6 rather. I mean, let's hope.
And that comes back to management. That comes back to leadership and management. When you've got 2 totally different studios who don't have a crossover, have almost exactly the same pathway to a disaster, there's a common point, and it's up the chain, and it's management. Mm-hmm. So, I'm sorry, I'm just going to have to jump in here because I've got to go.
Yeah.
Look, what they've done to Halo is just so disrespectful, and it's a slap in the face to every fan, and that pathway forward is a disaster. Like you say, they've just chucked it on life support, and they're waiting to pull the plug on it, and that's just, it's such a half-assed attempt, and it's just management. It's a management disaster. It'll be a case study in how to destroy the value of an IP. It's just appalling. Like, I cannot believe that. I cannot believe that they were even allowed to do that by their fans. There's people that defend this thing and say there's nothing wrong with it. It's good. It's great. This is a 10 out of 10 game. Like, how the hell there's something that's a 20 million players and it's the biggest launch on Halo and it's this, it's that, it's everything else, and then 6 months later it's dead.
Mm-hmm.
There's no tail end into it. They've completely disintegrated any value that the Halo name has.
Staff have
Because
literally changed the name positions to sustain, which literally means basically the same that they did for Halo 4, Master Chief Collection, and Halo 5. They did the same when essentially a skeleton crew was looking after the game after major content had stopped. No more major content.
Care and preservation mode, that's all it is.
Yeah.
Now look at the difference. Look at Gran Turismo.
Mm.
Yeah.
6 months in, nothing but free DLC every month and improvements.
It's amazing.
You know what I mean? There's such a massive difference between these two companies.
But it comes back round to the point. Oh man, it could go down so many different rabbit holes here. But you ask the question: what should they do? Who should they give it to? What should they do with it? Well, I think, and this will stir up a lot of people, but I think they should take Halo Infinite out the back and put a bullet in it and be done with it. Just don't even bother with what you've proposed. If there's no couch co-op, don't bother. If there's no split screen co-op, don't bother. Just put a bullet in it and be done with it. Just let it go. Take 12 to 18 months and say nothing. Go back to the drawing board and start again. Look at what made Halo great. It's got to have co-op. It's got to have that interaction. It can't have a garbage storyline and nothing in there. If you're going to have it in Game Pass, you've got to make sure you've got microtransactions that are actually worth a damn to make people want to buy them instead of this fluffy fucking rabbit ears shit that goes on top of them just to be a bit of fun. Now, how does that look in the future where there's Call of Duty involved and all the rest of it? They can't be the same. Don't make Call of Duty, which is heavily based on, simulating military combat and the storyline that goes along with that. Halo is a completely different setting. It's a completely different storyline. You treat it as such. Go back and look at what made Halo great and try and replicate that in a more thoughtful manner. If you've got to go and poach people from studios to actually get some decent story writing and some decent gameplay and some decent mechanics in there, that's fine. Halo there was a massive eruption when the sprint mode was put into Halo. How dare they put sprint mode in Halo? It takes away from the feel and the good of the game. They could put multiple different modes of transport in this current one and no one would bat an eyelid because they just go, they're just trying to unfuck the thing. Mm-hmm. Just go and get some people who know what they're doing and not necessarily that's a comment not aimed at the developers themselves and not aimed at the team leaders and that. Go and get some people to sit over the top and manage this project that know what the hell they're doing, that actually know what they're looking at, and not just to the head of whichever studio is looking after it. Get somebody to sit in as the SVP of key freaking IP, like they have over at Sony Productions, or like they have at Nintendo. They protect their key IP by having key people that's just dedicated to making sure the damn thing works well. And that's what Xbox is lacking, and they'll never get close. Embrace it, Tencent, NetEase, EA, Ubisoft and all the rest of them, they have those production teams that sit there and protect the stuff. Xbox seems to just go, Matt Booty's in charge of this, or Sarah Bond's in charge of that, and the teams are left independently to work on whatever they want to work on, to whatever quality they feel fit to do it at. They're never going to have an improvement there, and that's the thing that pisses me off the most. They were so disrespectful to this IP. There's basically slapped in the face of every fan, and yet there's still people out there defending it, saying, oh no, this is a 10 out of 10 game. No, fuck off. This thing's an abomination. Take it out the back and shoot it. As for what they should do going forward, controversially, give it to Arcane or give it to ID Software. Either of those two have
just don't make it a Doom clone, which it already has pretty much become, but still don't don't make it a Doom clone.
No,
keep it unique. But ID's a great shout.
ID's got an engine. They've got developers that know how to work first-person shooters. Yep. So all they would need to do over at ID is get in a writing team and set that up. They can port over the assets that they got out of 5 or Halo 4 or whichever one they want to use, do the trim-ups, get it in that engine, and take the time to actually get it going properly from the ground up. Don't change it halfway claim to spend $500 million doing it and then only spend $80 million, doing it. ID Software, I think that would be my number one pick. Give it to them. Give them a second team. Give them an expansion program and say, right, you guys are now looking after this.
Man, bring Halo and Doom together in the same universe. Create freaking Master Chief and Doomslayer together. That would be so epic on a spin-off. On a spin-off.
It's DLC.
Yeah, it would be
DLC
huge.
straight away. And your microtransactions, or you can get weaponry that's in Doom or something. But if you're going to spend the money to buy those studios, use the fucking things. And to say, I accept you saying we don't want Halo to become Doom. We don't want Doom to become Halo. The settings, as soon as you do the settings and as soon as you do the mechanics of how the games play, they're totally different. They're still first-person shooters, so there's a lot of underlying similarities between all first-person shooters in the movements, in setting up the actions, in setting up the gameplay, and how it all works. Give it to ID. Give them some support. Get some additional people over there that know what the hell they're doing, some experienced additional people that know what the hell they're doing, and give them a crack at it. But for the love of all that is holy, do not try and rush another one out to try and fix this one. Put this one to bed, bury it, wait 12 to 18 months, and then get the next one cracking. Get the studio in place with the engine and the pathway ahead sorted before you start the damn project. And that's a call out to senior management over at Microsoft and Xbox. Stop fucking around and letting these studios just piss their money up the wall, not going anywhere or anything. Put some key people in positions to get some freaking quality, because the fans deserve it. You owe it to them. If ID don't want to, if ID Software don't want to do it, give it to Arcane. Again, they might not have the greatest track record because of what happened with Deathloop, but Arcane aren't useless. They can make a first-person shooter much better than what 343 are currently doing or have ever done. They'd be top 5 first-person studios at the moment, Arcane. Mm-hmm. Yes, they're working on other stuff, doesn't matter. They've got an engine that's decent, yep, great, no worries, go for it. Give it to them. They at least know how to write a fucking story.
Facts. I love how people who haven't been here for the majority of the show tonight, like shout out to you, Aaron _ in the chat, like you're saying that we're crying and kicking up a stink about Call of Duty. And it's like you've not been here listening, and you just saying whatever. Like, I don't know, the first kind of juvenile reactory kind of projection you can come up with. If you had listened to the show tonight, you would know none of that shit has been happening tonight. No one is complaining about Microsoft buying Call of Duty. We're explaining the reason why Phil, who's claimed one thing and is doing another, doesn't sit right with the C.M.A. And on top of that, explaining why the C.M.A. are taking it further, because it poses a risk to new entries, to new entrants who want to start up their own game service, or subscription service or streaming service, but they can't because there's no third-party IPs to buy to feature on their service anymore, because they're all being made first-party. And this is what Folky and everyone on the panel tonight has discussed, is that if you have 50 third-party IPs bought within 2 years by one company, that it's getting a little extreme to the point where none of those IPs anymore would be able to go to a competing streaming service, like, I don't know, Amazon streaming service, for example, let alone PlayStation's. And people have peddled the narrative that Phil's a trustworthy guy, so we address that narrative, right? And how he lied and bullshitted about Bethesda completely and backtracked on it the moment the deal went through. We discussed that. We've discussed all of how, all of these narratives that have been raised up in defense of something, you guys feign kind of indifference to, like it's no big deal. If it's no big deal, then why are you fucking going to the ends of the earth to defend it? and make up excuses. So what we're doing is we're addressing the narratives one by one, getting the facts, and breaking it down. That's not complaining or crying, my guy. That's called having an intellectual conversation. You should try it sometime. Anyway.
On that note, I gotta go.
It's been awesome.
I gotta go.
Yeah, right. Bro, you've been fire. I can't, honestly. Wow, thank you.
You're welcome.
Love it.
You're welcome. So, I'll just, because I gotta go in a hurry, so I'll sign off. If anybody wants to catch up with me, Forky87 on Twitter, hit me up. If you got any questions about today, hit me up. But yeah, I don't get involved in the console wars bullshit and all that stuff. Just stick to the facts, stick to the solid information, and enjoy yourselves.
Yeah, big facts, Folky. Thank you, brother. Yep, you can find Folky at Folky87 on Twitter. And honestly, if there's a handful of people who I would class as essential, like follows, like completely essential, and Folky is one of them. He has a lot of knowledge thanks to his profession, and as a financial business analyst, and a lot of the stuff that we learn is stuff that he's shared with us. So it's definitely, we try to keep this show a source of information more than anything. And so thank you, Folky, for that, brother. It's been fire. Appreciate you as always.
No dramas. Thanks, lads. Thanks for letting me prattle on. Keep safe, lads. I'll talk to you soon, eh?
Speak to you soon.
Thanks for the info, bro.
It's Folky and Zuby are two essential follows. I'm really hoping one day they start their own show together. It would be amazing. Shout out to you, Zuby Tech, in the chat, brother. Appreciate you. Guys, I don't know about you, but I'd say, awesome conversation, man. No, but yeah, I mean, have you got any more thoughts on Halo Infinite?
All I can say is that I absolutely agree with Faulkner that its software would be like a perfect fit. Like, especially you can expect, not only polish, but like some polish and some extravagant things on the technical side, because its software, they're pioneers at that stuff, because like they have like one of the greatest fucking coders on the world with Sean Carmack. So I think like if you let its software like do their thing, like they do Halo justice. Microsoft just would have to like want it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I personally think Halo should have been done whenever Bungie decided they didn't want to do it anymore. I think that's when it should have stopped. 343, whether it's through management, just don't seem to be able to crack the code. So yeah, I'd probably let Halo. I'd probably, if I was Microsoft, I'd carry on supporting Infinite now, and try and make it the best game I possibly can now. But if I was them, I'd kind of let Halo rest for a bit. I wouldn't put ID or anybody on Halo. I'd let can you imagine John Carmack being tied down to a universe he hasn't created? I don't think he'd like that.
Yeah, no,
I think
I agree.
Maybe rest it and just let who they've bought now, let them work on what they want to work on. I think part of the problem might be that you're basically forcing devs to work on stuff that they maybe don't want to. I mean, you've got the Coalition. They were working on brand new IPs and then basically told, you know what, you're now our Gear studio. And the same thing happened with 343. They were put together and told, you're a Halo studio now. And maybe the love just isn't there for those franchises in those dev teams. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. It does. People have this narrative that Game Pass frees developers to work on whatever the fuck they want. It's the complete opposite. I mean, first party, perhaps, maybe they have the complete freedom, but we haven't seen that freedom with the Coalition or 343. We haven't seen, that agency there provided. And on top of that, what dev doesn't work on the game that they want? What studio doesn't, with the hope that they make the game they want and it's profitable for them? They don't, doesn't Game Pass dictate that they have to monetize it in the game? Like, there has to be in-game monetization. Like, doesn't that absolutely put a requirement and throw a requirement at the devs to compromise on? That's not freedom, because they still need to make money from it, and the subscriptions aren't enough to fund these games, so we have to monetize these games somehow. So these microtransactions in Halo Infinite, was that part of 343's vision for Halo? Really? I don't think so. I think it's.
Yeah.
I think you're fooling yourself if you think that.
Once I see that you had to pay for colours, I was out. That literally killed it for me.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't even customize my armor without having to spend money. I'm not. No, that's not how I played Halo. That's not how my Halo was played.
And
do you know what I mean?
The crazy thing is, they advertise the colouring of your Spartan and the freedom to customize your Spartan to represent you, the player, and how you feel in their kind of prior to release kind of video footage, hyping up the game, and everything was a lie. Everything was backtracked on.
Yeah. Remember when Halo Reach launched with 14 multiplayer maps, Forge, and Theater mode, and split screen? Like, where have those times went, man?
Mm-hmm.
Where have those times went? Now, like, split screen isn't even a thing anymore. Most game modes are missing, and now we get like this bare bones fucking roadmap, which is just essentially a drop
Life
of water in
support.
an endless sea.
Yeah, man, it's a damn shame. Honestly, like, it makes me sad when I see what's happened to Halo Infinite. It makes me angry that Microsoft did 343 dirty like this, and did the franchise that made Xbox. Before Gears, way before Gears existed. Halo was a world icon, and Master Chief was loved by everyone, and it's freaking shocking how not even Killzone could compete with Halo, and now look at it. It's very sad that it's been put on pretty much life support with no major content releases from here on out. Likely that's just speculation based on the job listing removals and the current positions that are held right now by basically a 10-man team working on the game, keeping the game breathing until the next Halo comes out. And this isn't to suggest people in the chat damage controlling Microsoft, but you have to appreciate, I'm fully aware Sony have a monopoly themselves, but that monopoly was built holistically and through sheer talent and well executed decisions. And how does that work? Well, it's a snowball effect, you see. The more popular Sony become, the more customers they have, the bigger the player base, the harder for Xbox to have leverage in acquiring business deals and partnerships for their games to sell, because their games aren't going to sell nearly as much as on PlayStation. So that becomes harder for them. So they have to pay more. They have to pay more for devs to work on a game for them, to release a game on their platform. So Sony's success does make it more difficult for Xbox. But that's the thing. Xbox had money. That's all you've ever thrown out there. That's how they could buy and spend $70 billion on Microsoft. So why didn't they spend that money on third-party deals, supporting developers to make quality freaking exclusives?
Do you know what's really crazy? They had the perfect formula during the 360 devs, days right before Kinect launched, and they started concentrating on the casuals. They had the perfect setup. The 360 early and middle years was some of the best in gaming, simply because they supported the shit out of their console. I mean, I bought so many games You know what I mean? Like, it was ridiculous. And I was happy to be a multi-console owner. I felt like I needed an Xbox to play those games. I don't feel like I need an Xbox this gen. And it actually upsets me a little bit, man, because I've always been a fan. Do you know what I mean? I've always been a fan of Xbox. And to watch them from literally Connect has launched, they have just done nothing but let me down, man. And it's a bit heartbreaking at times because I really enjoyed the likes of Rally Sport Challenge and PGR. Halo. I love the third party exclusives. I love the first party stuff, and it's just like they've never been able to capture that magic, and I don't understand why. Because any person with a working brain would be able to look over that. Even if you're Phil, you'd be able to look over the whole history of Xbox and see that the 360 was definitely the best days for them. And you would think that a smart man will go, well, I'll just copy that then.
But it's crazy ironic that people who shit on Sony and claim they're evil and wrong for being so successful, it's as if they were almost like saying, it's almost like saying Xbox 360 was the worst generation ever for Xbox because they were super successful. And it's like, that's what you want as a consumer. You want quality games to attract new people to that market. And if you haven't got that, then what are you going to peddle? You're not going to peddle the games. You're going to peddle the service and how cheap, how the cost of entry, which is what Xbox has basically become. And the implications of that in general on the attitudes of people towards kind of entitlement and the way that people look at a game now as a cost rather than an experience. It's like all I ever see is this worth $70? It's not your Skill Up summed it up perfectly. Listen very, very carefully to this. It is not your place to tell somebody else what something is worth to them. Say what it's worth to you, by all means. But what's worth something to you isn't worth the same to somebody else. So is The Last of Us remake worth $70, even though you can get it cheaper to somebody? How's it your fucking business? Of course, it evidently is to them who bought it.
I went to the shop today and happily paid for it, man.
Facts.
I could have actually got a discount off it, right, if I had went somewhere else. But I just went into the closest shop to me this morning because I was tired after work and got it for £64.
Yeah.
So,
and when I'm playing Ragnarok, bro, the last thing I'm thinking about is how much I spent on that game. All I'm thinking about is how fucking much I'm loving it. When that game comes out, I cannot wait.
Yeah, I'm the same, bro. What's the one with the hammer? The Japan edition.
Yeah,
I got that pre-ordered, bro. I can't wait.
Is it worth it? It's not worth it, Retro. It wasn't worth it to you. So why did you buy it? Because it's not worth it to you.
Night shift, okay? I'm gonna spend it how I want.
Are you saying a product that you spent money on was worth the money that you spent to you?
100%, dude.
Oh, fuck 100%. Off! Really? No, I don't believe 100%. It. I don't
know who thinks that be different, but that's the way buying stuff has always worked.
Yeah, facts. At the end of the day,
I just want to. Can I just shout out Ruby? There was a game I didn't mention, Gears of War. I just want to say how much time I spent on the first 3 Gears of Wars. Me and my wife were constantly playing co-op on that game. All-nighters, weekenders, oh my days. So that series I have loads of love for the original 3 releases. I just wanted to shout Zuby out there.
Yeah, man. Zuby's a Chad, man. He's a real gamer. His favourite series is Call of Duty. You know, he isn't super biased. He's just a guy who loves gaming. And he knows so much, man. He does so much research. It's crazy.
I love his post.
The amount of research he does, like he knows everything from new hardware being made, new innovations in the hardware space, to silicone and to software blueprints. Like, there is nothing that guy doesn't have knowledge in. And I swear, Sony have got their eyes on him. They'll be snatching him up sometime soon, I have no doubt, because He has a great ability to display a lot of information succinctly, for whether it's quoting individuals, key points in articles, to creating graphs and charts to show the information in a succinct way for people to understand and read. Like, he does a hell of a lot of work and spends a lot of hours to give people information on Twitter. And there is very few people I respect as much as Zubitech. So shout out to you, sir, in the chat. Thank you for joining us tonight. Is there anything else people want to say before we close this up? It's been a hell of a show. Nope.
Revisit Saints Row 2.
Revisit Saints Row 2. I love it. I love it. Shout out to everybody in the chat, right? I tell you, one thing I've noticed about our show is the viewers to like ratio is amazing. We have so many likes for the viewers we have. Like, you guys are amazing. You're so supportive of the show. Week in, week out, you've helped this show grow to what it's become. We're now at 925 subscribers. We're almost at 1,000 subs, guys. We've gone from 300 subscribers to nearly 1,000 in a little over 18 months. It's phenomenal. And honestly, like, I couldn't be more proud to have such an awesome chat and such an awesome panel. You're all amazing, every single one of you, whether you're new or OG, from Who Are You to Brian King to Richard Farmer to Geo Knows Gaming. You've come out with some absolute gems tonight, my dude. To Aziza with his light trolling, I love it. I'm just a woolly, what do I know? Sergeant 7, you're a legend, bro. Sorry, Sergeant 12, not Sergeant 7. It's great to see you here as always. Zubitech, of course, my guy. Retro, I don't know who the hell he is. Some random individual. Retro. I'm joking. I love it. 47. Dank Nate, Mary Wilcox, Compost Smurth. Oh my days, I could go on and on and on. Toolman, if I've missed you, I'm sorry. You know I love you and appreciate you. You know who you are. Dawn, Ice Queen Gaming, always been dead supportive. You're awesome guys. Yeah, love you all. So with that being said, guys, let's wrap this up. Let's get a summary of what we've discussed tonight, because it's been a lot. So we know how did Phil honor the contract as people peddle? Well, honoring the contract literally means not creating a counter offer to try and get the contract released, to release the publisher from the developer or the studio from the contract of the publisher. Doing so would involve not only a cancellation fee, but it would also incur further costs, clawback costs, spiraling way more than it would ever be worth. It is not him being Mr. Nice Guy. It's him literally protecting his business by honoring the contract, right? By allowing Bethesda and Sony to continue the contract they agreed to prior to acquisition. C.M.A, they called Microsoft's bluff. How? Well, evidently, Microsoft have said a lot of things and done the opposite. We know Phil Spencer promised that it wasn't their intention to take any games away from players with the Bethesda acquisition, that they want more people to play the games, not less. Those were Phil's words. And then as soon as the acquisition went through, he said, our goal is we bought Bethesda to provide you with quality exclusives on platforms that Xbox Game Pass exist. Couldn't be more opposite. But CMA don't believe anything that Microsoft say in court. You all know they bluff and blag their way, calling Call of Duty not a big deal, even though they spent $70 billion to get it. But on top of that, CMA are concerned about new entries into the gaming sphere. And why is that? Well, you have to appreciate if there are new entries coming in with their own subscription service models. Think that Amazon's new subscription service. Think, imagine if Stadia came back. if Google Stadia came back or anything like that. Well, there's a pool of they're not a publisher of games, right? So what they do is they buy games to have on their platform. But they can't do that if all of those third-party games are no longer third-party. If these publishers are now bought and are now all first-party. Now, it's different with Tencent or NetEase because they're not platform owners, whereas Xbox, Microsoft are. And now with Bethesda and with Activision, those things are going to be platform exclusives, i.e. not available for those new entries to have on their platform because they're not third party anymore. So it can damage the gaming space for these for new entries and new ventures and companies in the gaming sphere, whether it's subscription service or whether it's streaming service and cloud service. They're all damaged and harmed by this. It's not just about, oh, but PlayStation can't have Call of Duty in 5 years' time. That's got nothing to do with it. So it's just providing a bit of context as to the C.M.A's focus. And if you really think that Sony bribed the C.M.A, who directly stamped down on bribery, you're off your head. And that's all I'll say about that.
It's a government-funded thing.
Exactly. Freaking ridiculous, mate.
The fucking idiots. People actually saying that.
Yeah. Whether Tom Warren said it.
What?
xCloud Tim Dog said it. xCloud Tim Dog said it. Colt Eastwood said it. Like Post Up said it.
Colt Eastwood and that, no, fanatics, they spread bullshit and lies anyway.
Tom Warren's one of them. Yeah.
But who's one of them?
Shit you not. Yeah, Tom Warren's one of them. He's
a journalist.
What's a journalist nowadays, bro? They have no integrity or credibility anymore.
I know, I'm using the description loosely, but you know what I mean. Like people look to him to get informed. Like that's what a journalist is supposed to do. He's supposed to inform you of the facts. Mm-hmm. He can't even be asked to look into what that actually.
Well, do you remember Polygon, bro? CEO of Polygon. Basically, it was exposed as accepting bribes in so many words. Like he has full control over the reviews that are put out. He can edit them and change them to his will. He has so much invested interest in those reviews and what they say and the score that games are given. Why has he got invested interest in those? Well, obviously because the writing's on the wall.
What?
Yeah, exactly. Money.
You only get invested in something if there's a game for you.
So the FTC investigate this shit for a reason. They investigate journalism for a reason. Why? And so if Polygon are guilty of it, then what's to say, I don't know, IGN aren't guilty of it? Or, who's to say Destin isn't on that blacklist or whitelist rather?
Well, I mean, didn't Mishima, whatever it's called, I can never pronounce that name. But didn't they get in trouble? Weren't they doing ads for?
Yeah, they were.
But it was disclosing it
for Microsoft. Yeah.
I remember reading that,
bro. Honestly, like if you think this is all a tinfoil hat conspiracy, then you're naive as fuck. That's all I can say. Like this shit is real. This shit happens. It's industry. It's ingrained in the industry, and Sony have their fair share of guilt. But I tell you what, Microsoft are a whole nother level. The way that they do business is typical American business, and it's just different. And so journalists, some big names in journalism have their hands in some grubby buckets, man. And it's if one does it, then I'm pretty sure that other head journalists would be the target as well.
The unknown X say Hihachi Mishima. So it's Mishima. Is that the right way to say it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you mean Machinima.
Yeah, Machinima. But I think
Machinima was scummy as fuck. I'm glad that they're out of business now.
Yeah. And as for Aaron, do you think them buying Activision makes them a monopoly? I think it's a monopolistic practice, and it has monopolized to a degree. It's not monopolizing the whole industry, no, but it's definitely.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not at that level.
It's definitely that plus Bethesda has definitely affected and impacted everyone else in a significant way. And
it's definitely a big chunk.
And again, you know, I said it before, MS could have gone about spending 70 billion in across a period of 3 years, maybe spend 70 billion on reaching out, paying for, supporting and funding teams to create quality games. They would grow in their experience and talent. Microsoft would have exclusives. They would remain third party to work on other games too that they take on. It would help the industry grow, and Xbox would be more appealing to people to buy. But none of that shit happened. They spent 70 billion on a publisher and took away all those games from other platforms. But hey, you know, you defend that shit all you like, or you think what you want. That's just the facts, and that's what's happened. Halo Infinite is in sustain mode. Devs have changed their description to sustain. Evidently, it's now just a skeleton team supporting the game with no more major content updates, just sustaining it until the next Halo, letting it die off. It's a 10-man team who are working on the core of the multiplayer, which is why split screen co-op has been scrapped, evidently to minimize the workload. But on top of that, evidently they want to keep Xbox One on par with Xbox Series X in terms of content, rather than letting it stop. What
are you telling me? It went from a 10-year plan to a bloody 6-month survival technically?
Pretty much, yeah. According to a few sources, I have one of which is Leviathan Gamer, which is he knows his shit, bro. He spends many hours researching his stuff. He spends a lot of time and effort to figure things out, and he has his own sources. So, I would consider Leviathan an insider. I'm not, no way near, but he is. And so I have no reason to doubt what he's saying, and the writing's on the wall with the product we receive. What you see is what you see, and what you get is what tells a story, right? That all tells a story, and what we're seeing from Halo is no major content update drops. We're seeing literally XP and a shield, and shit like that. So writing's on the wall here. Here's hoping that Halo 6 is in development and not, 343 just going to get swallowed up with Activision. I really hope not. But they definitely deserve more support. Microsoft need to seriously, like Frost said about Sony, get their act together. Because they've really done that developer studio dirty, and they've done Halo dirty, and it deserves better, in my opinion.
I just forget how throughout the whole dev cycle, like Phil or whoever it is that's checking these games and checking these studios didn't honestly sit down, play it, and go, right, you're clearly not working right here. And then from there, just get rid of the top ones that are, the directors, the people that are clearly meant to be like shepherding the game into a playable, feature-packed, content-rich thing that we pay for.
Yeah.
And it just never happened. It's like
Facts.
Microsoft just kind of put on the blinders. It was like they just ignored 343 and just let them do what they want.
Honestly, I'm surprised more people haven't spoken out at 343 about the lack of support, because it seems like they have received a huge lack of support, and people have just left and moved on with no replacements. Or contracts have expired. Why did they only sign people down for 2-year contracts instead of employ them for 4 years? Like, it's just shocking. We really missed the mark with that one. So yeah, sad news about Halo, but Folky summed it up perfectly with his rant. Independent studios reject Game Pass day one. We summed that up and explained that. Basically, to summarize for you lot who have joined later on, Callisto Protocol developer Glenn Schofield, head of Striking Distance Studios, has said that the financial model of Game Pass is very difficult for him as an independent developer and his type of game. Thomas Pua, also from, otherwise known as Riot RMD on Twitter, backed that up as well, and he works at Remedy, and he said he agrees 100%, and that's because the games that they make, or like Titanfall 2 or Callisto Protocol, sorry, not Titanfall, Control and Callisto Protocol aren't filled with microtransactions and aren't monetized in game. They're literally sold, and that's the monetization, is the MSRP, is selling the game. And that does not work for Game Pass. You need those games to be monetized, which is, and even then, it's a gamble. So, independent studios aren't kind of too keen with ambitious games, that is, to kind of agree to Game Pass day and date. They're more keen to sign up to it as a double dip, like Hitman 3 was a double dip. It joined Game Pass a year after release, and that's great. That works great. 100% advocate that. And as a result of these independent studios struggling to kind of be convinced to sign up to Game Pass, that would explain why, almost out of desperation, Xbox have just bought the biggest publisher on the freaking planet. Because if they're not going to agree to have their games bought day one for Game Pass for a relatively little sum compared to what sales would provide, then we'll buy them, and then they don't have a choice. And that's basically the end all and be all of the show, guys. I really hope you've all enjoyed it. The panel's been amazing. The chat's been lit. Thank you for all the new subscribers. We're almost at 1,000. Please definitely share the show out. I'll be timestamping it as soon as I can. Let's outro the panel. Wilhelm, thank you, brother, for tonight. You've been awesome. Where can we find you?
Oh, you can all find me on Twitter under @MaximusWilhelm, and I want to give a quick shout out to the Restoration Project because they just released a new trailer on their Twitter, and it just is simply looking amazing. Like, seriously, I'm just amazed by the progress the team is making every single day, and like I've said before, man, when the demo is out, hopefully by the end of this year, I'll be the first one installing it and just playing through it, man. I'm so hyped for that project, and I suggest you all to follow it if you're also a fellow Duke Nukem enjoyer.
I've just typed the Twitter handle into the chat. You can follow Duke Nukem Restoration Project at DNF2001RP. They were on our show a few weeks ago. They're freaking amazing. See what they're doing. And yeah, definitely, they deserve every shout out, and I'll be definitely retweeting their stuff. But yeah, awesome. Well, thank you, Will, bro, for tonight. Appreciate you. Retro, what about you, buddy? Where can we find you?
You can catch me on Twitter, XTSX Retro. Or you can catch me on the PlayStation, usually on Gran Turismo. It's like my forever game. Every time it releases, I play it until the next one comes out. But yeah, you can find me on PlayStation, find me on Twitter. You can find me on Doomsayers podcasts on a Friday and sometimes Saturday, sometimes Sunday, depending on how he's feeling. And you catch me on this show too.
Mm-hmm. Big facts. Shout out to everyone in the chat. You can find me at Wooly_gamer. If you type in hashtag WWCOG, which stands for Worldwide Company of Gamers Podcast, into Twitter, type that hashtag in, just WWCOG or COG. You'll find both mine and the Worldwide Company of Gamers Podcast Twitter handle, and anyone else who has that podcast, that hashtag in their bio, i.e. the panel. And you can follow us on Twitter. You can reach out to us. You can talk to us anytime. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope it's been an informative and great show. Shout out to David Faulkner in the chat. Can see you listening in still. Just know we really appreciate you, dude. The community has definitely noticed you. A lot of people talk about how invaluable you are to this show, and I couldn't agree more. And also, just, you're blowing up on Twitter and other podcasts too. because of your insight and your expertise and knowledge. So please know that we appreciate you, dude. You can follow David Faulkner at Faulky87. And thank you so much to every single one of you in the chat. You're all awesome. Toolman, Mary, Who Are You, Brian King, Retro, GeoNose Gaming, all of you. Aziza, even you, Aaron _ you Xbox fanboy. You shill. Shout out to you, sir. Anyway, it's been awesome. Have a good one, fam. Just remember, very important thing, don't be a donut. Use your noggin. Peace.